Chapter 4095. The third move of the Sacred Tower of the Flaming Dragon's third level. The Origin Dragon Martial Technique. It crashed down with a loud bang. The ice pillar suppressed Kong Shinmu's entire dragon body. However, Kong Shinmu did not suffer much damage because he had already raised his resistance to the power of ice the previous 2 times. This time, he relied on the chaotic dragon body to resist the attack. He did not even use the martial dragon shield. Break! The Void Dragon's Sky-Raising Break was an Origin Dragon martial technique. Kong Shinmu would never be stingy in using it. After all, he had to use this dragon martial technique frequently in order to improve his cultivation and obtain greater power. The illusory dragon appeared, and countless pitch-black devouring light cannons swept down, completely destroying the frost dragon pillars in the field and bombarding the illusory dragon warrior. The Void Dragon's Sky-Raising Break blasted the illusion dragon martial artist to the ground. Even a tall mountain would have been destroyed by this kind of power. However, in the Sacred Tower of the Flaming Dragon, the tower made of ancient wood did not even tremble a little. Kong Shinmu did not think too much about the sturdiness of the Sacred Tower of the Flaming Dragon. Instead, he flew forward and wrapped his whole body with pitch-black devouring power, completely trapping the illusion dragon martial artist on the 3rd level. The devouring power continuously eroded into the depths of the illusion dragon martial artist's body. The illusion dragon martial artist no longer had the ability to resist. The first move did not kill Kong Shinmu, which meant that Kong Shinmu had a high chance of turning defeat into victory. The 4th level. Kong Shinmu's eyes were filled with determination as he flew up into the sky. Ordinary dragon martial artists, even existences like the sacred dragon Shi Tao, who had made contributions and wanted to set foot on the same level as the Dragon King's inheritance blood, only needed to pass the 3 tests. If it were someone else, they would have already succeeded and left with great satisfaction. After all, to them, passing the 3rd level had exhausted all their strength. After all, very few dragon martial artists had devouring power like Kong Shinmu. Even some other special innate powers or nirvana powers did not have the same combat effect as the devouring power. On one hand, it could heal one's injuries and replenish the energy one had expended. On the other hand, it could increase one's resistance to the opponent's power. There was no other talent power with such an effect in the Dragon Emperor Empire. Of course, the Dragon Martial Continent was incomparably vast, and there might be talents similar to Kong Shinmu's. However, it was absolutely impossible for there to be a devouring power like Kong Shinmu's, which allowed him to increase the level of the Divine Dragon's inheritance blood essence by devouring the Divine Dragon's corpse. Once such a heaven-defying ability was exposed, Kong Shinmu would face endless killing intent. He stepped into the 4th floor. Kong Shinmu did not know that he had already embarked on a challenge that no one had been able to pass for over 100 years. On the 4th floor of the Flaming Dragon Sacred Tower, the illusionary dragon martial artist that appeared in front of him was a 4th-level Nirvana Tribulation existence. Its strength was 50% stronger than the illusionary dragon martial artist on the 3rd floor. In other words, it was equivalent to 3 times the challenge on the 1st floor. 3 times the strength was not just the difficulty of the first 3 floors added together. Simply put, even if a dragon martial artist only used a third of his strength to defeat the illusionary dragon martial artist on the 1st floor, it would be impossible for him to defeat the opponent and pass the 4th test on the 4th floor. Kong Shinmu's face finally revealed a solemn expression. The previous 3 floors could only be regarded as an appetizer. The 3rd floor might be difficult for others, but for Kong Shinmu, it was just a little more than the limit. He had not used his true strength yet. But now, he had to go all out. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would fall into a state of failure. After all, he was not sure if the illusionary dragon martial artist on the 4th floor had some powerful origin dragon martial technique, or if it had cultivated the origin dragon martial technique to the heaven tier. These were all possibilities, so Kong Shinmu did not want anything to go wrong. Until now, Kong Shinmu did not know how much the divine dragon inheritance blood in his body could improve, but he wanted to challenge as many illusionary dragon martial artists as possible. Once he defeated them, the final harvest would definitely be more. Just as he stepped into the 4th floor of the Flaming Dragon Sacred Tower, Dragon Emperor Yen, who was far away in the sealing dragon abyss, opened his eyes from his closed-door training. He nodded in satisfaction. To him, Kong Shinmu's talent was still relatively average. With enough resources, there were also many young geniuses in Yen Dragon Emperor City who could reach Kong Shinmu's current level of improvement. However, What Dragon Emperor Yen valued the most was Kong Shinmu's special talent. With that special devouring talent, how many floors could Kong Shinmu challenge in the Flaming Dragon's sacred tower? When Kong Shinmu stepped into the fourth floor, Dragon Emperor Yen sensed it. After all, the entire Flaming Dragon's sacred tower was his treasure, so he naturally knew the situation inside like the back of his hand. Indeed, the fourth floor did not disappoint me. However, the difficulty of the fourth floor suddenly increased. I hope you can give this Dragon Emperor a surprise. Dragon Emperor Yen was in the Sealing Dragon Abyss, so no one knew what he was thinking. He had occupied the Sealing Dragon Abyss, so naturally, he wanted to let the mysterious power in it affect him, so that he could improve his strength. Until now, his strength had increased to a considerable extent, which made him extremely happy. Naturally, he paid more attention to Kong Shinmu, who had discovered this place. In the Flaming Dragon Emperor dynasty, inside the Flaming Dragon's sacred tower, Kong Shinmu was facing the Gale Illusion Dragon martial artist on the fourth floor. The other party was in the Nirvana Tribulation realm, so his strength was extremely terrifying. Although for the sake of fairness, this Illusion Dragon martial artist still did not have the power of Nirvana, the other party was using the Origin Source Dragon martial technique, which was too terrifying. The challenge left behind by the Super Divine Dragon. Let me see how difficult it is. Kong Shinmu shouted, and the devouring power wrapped the Black Dragon's body, sweeping towards the other party. However, before Kong Shinmu could react, an invisible wind blade suddenly attacked from the front. This wind blade came without a sound, and Kong Shinmu had no time to react at all. He could only move his body slightly to the side as fast as possible. As a result, the invisible wind blade cut through his dragon tail, directly cutting off his black dragon tail. Ah! Kong Shinmu snorted angrily. He really did not expect the other party's attack speed to be so fast. This Origin Source Dragon martial technique used the invisible wind blade to attack the enemy. The speed was extremely terrifying, and it was even silent. Ordinary dragon martial artists could not predict such an attack at all. It should be known that Kong Shinmu cultivated the chaotic dragon body, which was the Origin Source Dragon martial technique. In the end, the other party directly cut off his dragon tail, without any pause. It could be seen that if he was slow in dodging, his head would have been separated from his body. However, since he was prepared, he would not be in such a hurry next. Chapter 4096. Jiang Shenwu immediately unleashed the Void Dragon, raising the sky break. Moreover, the devouring power accompanied this move and enveloped the body of the Illusion Dragon martialist. A terrifying power erupted at once. However, Kong Shinmu's dragon tail was severed by the opponent's Origin Dragon martial technique, and he lost the ability to fly. He fell toward the ground of the fourth floor of the Flame Dragon's sacred tower. The Illusion Dragon martial artist did not know what mercy was, nor did he have any arrogance. As soon as the opponent saw that Kong Shinmu was injured, he executed the Origin Dragon martial technique again at the fastest speed possible. The invisible wind blade swept over in an instant, and a gust of wind forced the surrounding air to disperse. If he was as unprepared as before, Kong Shinmu would probably die under this move. Unfortunately, from the moment his dragon tail was severed, Kong Shinmu had already put up a 120,000 defense against the opponent's attack. Defend! The second-grade dragon martial technique, Martial Dragon Shield, and the dragon-grade dragon weapon, Halberd of Heavenly Saint, were executed at once. This time, the opponent's wind blade was finally unable to inflict serious damage on Kong Shinmu like the first time. Although the invisible wind blade directly broke the Martial Dragon Shield and forced the Halberd of Heavenly Saint back, it had already lost most of its power by the time it slashed at Kong Shinmu's black dragon body. Its sharpness could only leave an extremely deep wound on Kong Shinmu's body, and it was not enough to kill Kong Shinmu. At the same time, Kong Shinmu's Void Dragon Sky-Raising Break had already bombarded the opponent's body, and the pitch-black devouring power corroded the opponent's body. It had already devoured a certain amount of the Gale talent power, and then transferred it to Kong Shinmu's body, allowing him to recover at the fastest speed. Right now, the most important thing was that his dragon tail had been severed, and he could not fly, causing his agility to be far inferior to the opponent. No matter what the opponent used, he could only take it head-on. Therefore, the first thing Kong Shinmu prepared to do was to recover his dragon tail. If an ordinary dragon warrior reached this level, their dragon tail would be chopped off in a single move and they would basically lose their fighting strength. However, Kong Shinmu relied on his devouring power and had the possibility of turning defeat into victory. As Kong Shinmu devoured his opponent's storm innate ability, his dragon tail was also regenerating at a rapid speed. Previously, his dragon tail had been chopped off, and people thought that he was going to be crippled. However, he quickly recovered. It was the same now. The devouring power devoured the opponent's power, allowing Kong Shinmu to quickly regrow his severed tail. However, the opponent's attacks on Kong Shinmu were far from stopping. One after another, invisible wind blades rained down from the sky, landing on Kong Shinmu's body. Even with the martial dragon shield and heavenly Saint Halberd's protection, Kong Shinmu's body was still suffering heavy injuries. Every time, he avoided the vital parts, and at the same time, used all his strength to regrow his severed tail. Finally, after the opponent launched another 3 attacks, Kong Shinmu's severed tail regrown, and his black dragon body once again soared into the air. Another invisible wind blade was directly dodged by Kong Shinmu's extreme shadow-flowing light movement dragon martial skill, and he even got close to the opponent's body. Devour! The devouring power gushed out like a violent tsunami, enveloping the opponent's divine dragon body in all directions. The opponent's power was being devoured by Kong Shinmu at an even faster speed. At this moment, Kong Shinmu had devoured enough storm innate ability, and his divine dragon body's resistance to storm innate ability had become even stronger. Just the martial dragon shield and heavenly Saint Halberd were enough to offset the opponent's attack power, preventing the opponent from hitting him. Kill! The devouring power turned into shadow dragon teeth and rained down on the opponent's body. The opponent's strength had been devoured, and he was much weaker than he was at the beginning, losing the possibility of defeating Kong Shinmu. It could be said that Kong Shinmu could turn defeat into victory if he could survive this. The opponent's first move was indeed powerful, but it failed to kill Kong Shinmu. Then, Kong Shinmu could use the devouring power to defeat the opponent instead. The illusion dragon martial artist did not have the intelligence of a real dragon martial artist. Although he was strong, when faced with Kong Shinmu's cheat-like devouring power, he could only die with a grievance. Even so, Kong Shinmu still needed a long time to completely kill his opponent. The devouring power made Kong Shinmu lose the super tyrannical power to kill his opponent directly, but it gave him extremely terrifying toughness. He could not defeat his opponent in a short time, but he could constantly devour his opponent in close combat, slowly nibbling away at his opponent until he died. Almost an hour later, the Gale Illusion Dragon martial artist that was entangled by Kong Shinmu finally lost all its strength. Not to mention the Origin Dragon martial technique, it could not even release a wisp of the Gale power in its body. The entire body of the Gale Illusion Dragon had been torn to pieces by the devouring power, turning into pure heaven and earth energy that flowed into Kong Shinmu's body. The challenge of the 4th floor is already extremely difficult. If it wasn't for the devouring power that healed my injuries, I would have failed long ago since I was seriously injured. The next 5th floor, the 5th test, will definitely be even more difficult. I can't hold back any more tricks. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. He knew that the toughest test was coming. In order to upgrade the Divine Dragon Inheritance Blood Essence from the Sky Dragon level to the Holy Dragon level, a huge amount of Divine Dragon Blood Essence was needed. This kind of essence was relatively easy to obtain in the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon, but it was basically impossible to obtain it after leaving the Sacred Tower. Treasures like the Dragon Chi Crystal only contained an extremely small amount of Divine Dragon Blood Essence. If Kong Shinmu wanted to rush to the Holy Dragon level of Inheritance Blood Essence, he had to pass the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon. Otherwise, he would always be that little bit away from truly upgrading the Divine Dragon Blood Essence. Although there was still the idea of going to the Divine Dragon Graveyard later, for Kong Shinmu, since the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon had come here, he must not give up this opportunity. He must grasp it tightly in his hands. Go! Kong Shinmu had just devoured the entire Gale Illusion Dragon, and his body was overflowing with energy. He was in peak condition. In this state, he flew straight to the 5th floor above his head. At the same time, he held the heavenly sacred halberd in his hand, which shone with a golden light. At the toughest test, he finally decided to fuse with the heavenly sacred halberd. In this way, he might be able to withstand the attack of the Gale Illusion Dragon martial artist on the 5th floor. After all, the opponent's first attack was definitely the most difficult for Kong Shinmu to withstand. In order to prevent himself from being killed in an instant, Kong Shinmu had already used all the means he had. Martial Dragon Shield. Chaos Dragon Body. Fusion with the Heavenly Sacred Halberd. Chapter 4097. Magic Crystal. Martial Dragon Shield. The Sacred Sky Halberd fused with Kong Shinmu, emitting a holy golden glow that attached to his pitch-black dragon body. With an unstoppable momentum, Kong Shinmu suddenly rushed to the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower. At this time, far away from the ceiling dragon abyss, Dragon Emperor Yen had a smile on his face. He really reached the 5th floor, but I wonder if he can successfully pass it? Dragon Emperor Yen had high hopes for Kong Shinmu. Now that he could feel the aura of the Gale Dragon on the 4th floor disappear, Dragon Emperor Yen knew very well that Kong Shinmu had passed the 4th challenge of the Sacred Tower. Next was the 5th challenge, which was also the most terrifying opponent in the entire Sacred Tower, the Star Dragon. In the past, Dragon Emperor Yen had challenged the Sacred Tower once, but he also lost to the Star Dragon in the Sacred Tower. Apart from him, the number of dragon warriors who could pass the 4th challenge in the history of Dragon Emperor dynasty could be counted on one hand, and every one of them was a great figure. Today, Kong Shinmu's performance had confirmed to Dragon Emperor Yen that he was an absolute genius. But what kind of genius was he? Was he the same as Dragon Emperor Yen? Or did he surpass Dragon Emperor Yen? Dragon Emperor Yen didn't know this yet. He had to wait for Kong Shinmu to challenge the 5th opponent to find out. Inside the Sacred Tower of the Sacred Tower, Kong Shinmu rushed to the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower with endless momentum. As soon as he flew in, endless starlight flashed and appeared around his body. Starburst. This is the power of the stars. Kong Shinmu immediately realized that the opponent on the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower was definitely an illusion dragon warrior who had mastered some kind of star attribute power. However, Kong Shinmu, who had just flown into the 5th floor, was ambushed before he could even catch a glimpse of the other party. The power of the stars exploded around Kong Shinmu in an instant, and a terrifying force descended from the sky, sweeping over from all directions, completely surrounding Kong Shinmu. Such a terrifying power caused Kong Shinmu's divine dragon body to suffer terrible damage. His entire body was almost shattered by the power of the stars. The surface of the divine dragon body was completely attached to the power of the stars. The attached power of the stars was still corroding and burning the surface of Kong Shinmu's dragon body at a terrifying speed. After experiencing this starburst, Kong Shinmu finally saw his opponent. The Star Dragon. It was a starry divine dragon soaring high in the sky. Its body was 1,000 feet long, just like a dragon martial artist with inherited heavenly dragon blood. However, its entire body shone with dazzling starlight. Clearly, it was much stronger than an ordinary dragon martial artist with inherited heavenly dragon blood. Star Dragon. Kong Shinmu knew the power of the other party's talent. This was an extremely powerful power. Moreover, the opponent's starburst just now was a kind of source dragon martial technique that had been cultivated to the dragon level. Under this starburst, Kong Shinmu was seriously injured. Moreover, the power of the devouring power in his body was temporarily sealed by the power of the stars. It was completely blocked for a short period of time and could not be released. This almost put Kong Shinmu in a desperate situation. If he could use the power of devouring, he could slowly grind his opponent to death. But now, the opponent's power of the stars was so terrifying that it could actually seal the power of devouring in Kong Shinmu's body, making it impossible to use it. The most important thing was that as soon as Kong Shinmu flew up, the opponent struck first and sealed his power of devouring, making it impossible for him to fight back. Rumble. As Kong Shinmu was seriously injured, the power of the stars in the surroundings once again erupted. With a terrifying might, wave after wave crashed down on Kong Shinmu, as if it wanted to destroy Kong Shinmu completely. Kong Shinmu couldn't use the power of devouring, and there were only a few methods he could use now. Halberd of the Heavenly Sacred. Break for me. Kong Shinmu's body flickered with golden light, and the power of the Halberd of the Heavenly Sacred erupted at this moment. Countless rays of golden halberd light emerged from his side, and then blocked the layers of power of the stars in the surroundings. At the same time, a void dragon condensed from the side and borrowed the power of the golden light from the halberd of the Heavenly Sacred. 8 golden dragon cannons blasted out in an instant. Void dragon raises the sky. It was the same source dragon martial technique, but in a situation where the power of devouring couldn't be used, it immediately stimulated Kong Shinmu's potential. Earth Grade. Originally, Kong Shinmu had just cultivated the Void Dragon Raises the Sky. But now, under the pressure of the terrifying power of the opponent, Kong Shinmu suddenly achieved a breakthrough from the human grade to the Earth Grade. The power of this move instantly became extremely terrifying. When Kong Shinmu's Void Dragon Raises the Sky burst out, the power of the stars in the surroundings was blown away for a moment, giving Kong Shinmu a chance to catch his breath. Devour. With this chance to catch his breath, Kong Shinmu finally released a part of the power of devouring, and once again bombarded the place where the Star Dragon was located with the power of the Void Dragon Raises the Sky. The power of devouring immediately shrouded the body of the opponent. Unfortunately, his opponent was simply too strong. Source Dragon Martial Technique, Defense of the Stars. A layer of defensive barrier of the power of the stars appeared around the illusion of the Star Dragon, blocking all the devouring power of Kong Shinmu's Void Dragon Raises the Sky. The devouring power wanted to devour the opponent's defense of the stars, but unfortunately, the Source Dragon Martial Technique was invulnerable. There was no gap between the fusion of power, and even the devouring power couldn't find where to start devouring. In other words, the opponent's Source Dragon Martial Technique had no flaws at all. This made it so that even if Kong Shinmu released the devouring power, he couldn't do anything to the opponent for a while. However, Kong Shinmu still gained something, and that was the power of the stars scattered in the air was still devoured by his devouring power, allowing him to slightly increase his resistance to the power of the stars. This gave Kong Shinmu hope of defeating the opponent, and the hope was very high. However, the next moment, break of the stars. The power of the stars instantly condensed into a star, which rotated at a high speed on the 5th floor of the sacred tower of the Fire Dragon. The light blue brilliance of the stars illuminated the entire 5th floor of the sacred tower of the Fire Dragon. Immediately afterward, the star fell with a loud bang, smashing towards Kong Shinmu. With this move, the star condensed from the power of the stars completely filled the entire 5th floor of the sacred tower of the Fire Dragon. There was no way for Kong Shinmu to dodge, and he could only take it head-on. This is the heaven level of the Source Dragon Martial Technique? Kong Shinmu's eyes widened as he watched the giant star condensed from the power of the stars falling from the sky. He was a little shocked. Chapter 4098. Kong Shinmu didn't have any time to think. He could only use all the means at his disposal. The fusion of the martial dragon god shield and the heavenly saint halberd, under the eruption of the golden light, made Kong Shinmu's defense reach the strongest level ever. But even so, it wasn't enough. The destructive power of an origin dragon martial technique cultivated to the heaven level was absolutely terrifying to the extreme. If Kong Shinmu was careless for a moment, it was very likely that he would be killed by the other party's giant star. Void Dragon Sky Raising Strike. Kong Shinmu could only use this origin dragon martial technique and let it attack the giant star. A loud explosion sounded. All of Kong Shinmu's power poured into the giant star, but still couldn't break it. The Void Dragon Sky Raising Strike only weakened it by 1/3, and the remaining 1/3 of the star's power finally fell on Kong Shinmu's body. Rumble! Kong Shinmu didn't have any power to resist. His whole body was blasted by the giant star into the ground of the 5th floor of the Flame Dragon's sacred tower, heavily smashing into the ground. The sacred tower wasn't damaged in the slightest, not even the slightest bit moved. But Kong Shinmu felt like his whole body was about to fall apart. Inside the body of the black dragon, the meridians, blood vessels, tendons, and bones ruptured layer by layer. Blood splattered everywhere. The star power had completely corroded his body, making every part of his body, every tiny part, carry the particles of the star power. These particles were still destroying Kong Shinmu's black dragon body at an extremely terrifying speed. But this situation made Kong Shinmu overjoyed. First, he didn't die. The opponent's terrifying origin dragon martial technique cultivated to the heaven level didn't kill him. He was still on the verge of death. Second, the opponent's star power had already corroded his body. For others, this star power was very likely to be the culprit that killed them, but for Kong Shinmu, it was something that could save his life. Devour! With such a fortuitous encounter between life and death, Kong Shinmu had no choice but to seize this opportunity. Originally, it was rather difficult for him to devour his opponent's cosmic energy to increase his resistance against him. After all, his opponent's defense was impenetrable, and his devouring power could only devour the scattered parts of his opponent's energy. But now, the other party's cosmic energy had invaded his body, becoming the best target for him to devour. Kong Shinmu's devouring power was fully activated. At the same time, he was also guarding against his opponent's dragon attack. In just a breath of time, Kong Shinmu had swallowed a portion of the star energy, and then transformed this star energy into the purest essence of his flesh and blood, healing most of his injuries. At the same time, his resistance to the power of the stars increased by a large margin. Although it was not enough to reverse the situation was already moving in a good direction. After the power of the stars invaded his body, it completely became his target to devour. However, after a breath's time, the other party's attack came again. This time, it wasn't the Origin Dragon martial skill that had been cultivated to the heaven level, but another move. It was also a heaven-level Origin Dragon martial technique. The power of the stars condensed into beams of light in mid-air, forming a light purple stream of light, like a meteor falling towards Kong Shinmu. Although Kong Shinmu was devouring the power of the stars in his body, he was still paying attention to the star dragon's movements above. At this moment, he wrapped his entire divine dragon body in a pitch-black devouring power at the fastest speed. Extreme Shadow Flowing Light. The Super Dragon martial technique was displayed, causing his entire pitch-black dragon body to turn into a stream of light. This stream of light quickly flew up into the sky, brushing past his opponent's light purple stream of light. The giant star just now had left Kong Shinmu with no place to hide. But for this star-flowing light, Kong Shinmu was prepared in advance. He flashed away the moment his opponent released it, successfully and completely evaded his opponent's attack. Originally, after being bombarded by the giant star of the stars just now, the dragon martial artist would basically not have any strength to move. The opponent's star-flowing light had originally wanted to end Kong Shinmu's life. As a result, Kong Shinmu devoured the power of the stars that had eroded into his body, thereby restoring a part of his body, allowing him to display the key dragon martial technique. In the time it took for him to dodge the star-flowing light, Kong Shinmu continued to devour the power of the stars in his body, allowing his resistance to this power to reach a higher level. Moreover, the injuries he had just suffered had healed even more. The current Kong Shinmu was not far from his peak state. Although there were still some injuries left, these were insignificant minor injuries. Every battle was a torment for Kong Shinmu. Even though he had the terrifying ability to devour power to recover from his injuries, the pain he experienced was unimaginable and unbearable to outsiders. When his opponent's giant star fell just now, Kong Shinmu felt as if his entire body was about to fall apart. At that moment, it was as if even his thoughts were about to stop. If it were not for his firm mind and strong willpower, he would have already died at the hands of the Star Dragon. Even if it was another dragon martial artist with the same strength and ability, they might not be able to persist for such a long time. Kong Shinmu continued to devour the power of the stars in his body, turning this power into energy within his body. This scattered power of the stars was no longer under his opponent's control. Instead, it had become a captive of Kong Shinmu, staying in his body for him to devour and absorb. It was unable to cause too much damage to him. In other words, the damage that this power of the stars caused to Kong Shinmu's body was not as much as what Kong Shinmu could recover by devouring this power of the stars. After the star stream, the opponent's illusion, the Star Dragon, seemed a little surprised that Kong Shinmu had actually avoided its move. In fact, the Star Dragon was an illusion and had no emotions. Its battle was entirely based on its instincts. It instinctively wanted to kill any challenger who broke into the 5th floor of the Flame Dragon's sacred tower. So when it saw that Kong Shinmu was still alive, its dragon martial skill was once again ready to be unleashed. The challenge of the Star Dragon on the 5th floor was something that even the Flame Dragon Emperor had not been able to challenge, which showed how terrifying the difficulty was. It was the same move from just now, the giant star. It was obvious that the illusion, the Star Dragon, had discovered that the star stream could not deal with Kong Shinmu at all. It could only use this terrifying dragon martial skill, which could not be avoided, to cause damage to Kong Shinmu. As the giant star in the sky gradually condensed, Kong Shinmu knew that another test had come. Next, this giant star would continue to condense and then bombard him, causing unbearable damage to him. Come on! At this time, Kong Shinmu had already devoured all the remaining power of the stars in his body, increasing his resistance to the power of the stars by a lot. Moreover, the injuries he had just suffered had completely healed. Chapter 4099. The giant star fell once again, and Kong Shinmu noticed that after this star fell and exploded, his opponent immediately started to condense another giant star. He was definitely planning to rely on the continuous bombardment of stars to kill Kong Shinmu here. However, compared to the beginning, Kong Shinmu had a certain understanding of his opponent's strength. Martial Dragon Shield. Kong Shinmu even let go of the heavenly sacred halberd, not allowing it to participate in the defense. He only displayed the martial dragon shield and then bombarded the giant star with the void dragon sky-raising break. Rumble. Once again, Jiang Shenwu's entire body was blasted into the ground of the ancient tree. Once again, his entire divine dragon body suffered the same injury as before. This time, Kong Shinmu didn't stop at all. He used his devouring power to devour the cosmic energy that invaded his body. The star energy that had invaded his body was like sweet dew after a long drought, or even a torrential downpour. If he didn't handle this rainstorm well, he would be completely destroyed. But if he handled it well, it would be the nourishment for his rise again. He continued to devour and absorb the cosmic energy, and the injuries he suffered were more or less healed in 3 breaths of time. However, at this time, another giant star had already condensed and crashed down on his location. Just now, I didn't use the heavenly sacred halberd and was able to withstand the attack of the opponent's origin dragon martial skill. Now that I've devoured more cosmic energy, my defense will definitely be stronger. Kong Shinmu was very confident in himself. While releasing the void dragon sky-raising break, he also fused it with the heavenly sacred halberd, using the golden light to defend against the bombardment of the giant star. Last time, he used the void dragon sky-raising break in conjunction with the martial dragon shield. This time, he fused it with the heavenly sacred halberd to complement the void dragon sky-raising break. As a result, the defensive power this time would definitely be lower than the previous time. But the effect was the same. Kong Shinmu could also withstand the attack of the origin dragon martial skill. Because he had just devoured the star power, he already had a stronger resistance to the opponent's innate ability. In fact, Kong Shinmu didn't even want to completely block the attack. In that case, without the power of the universe corroding his body, where would he be able to devour the other party's power to recover? In the next moment, the third giant star exploded. Kong Shinmu's entire divine dragon body exploded. He rolled a few times on the ground and slammed heavily into the ancient wooden wall on the 5th floor of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. His entire body was covered in blood, and the faint purple power of the universe was embedded in his wounds. It was still continuously destroying his divine dragon body. Unfortunately, this time, Kong Shinmu revealed a confident smile. He had already won. The devouring power quickly covered his entire body and flowed out from his body, continuously devouring the star power that had invaded his body, turning it into the pure essence of life and flesh, and continuing to heal his injuries. This process could be said to be extremely painful, but in order to be able to devour more star power, Kong Shinmu chose not to completely defend against the opponent's origin dragon martial skill. Instead, he took the initiative to withstand the opponent's power. Although he was seriously injured, it allowed more star power to corrode into Kong Shinmu's body. This gave Kong Shinmu a chance to turn defeat into victory. Therefore, although the process was destined to be painful, he still decided to endure it, just to defeat the opponent in front of him and successfully challenge the 5th floor of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. 3 breaths of time. There was only a gap of 3 breaths of time between each attack. The star power that Kong Shinmu absorbed and devoured was used to heal his injuries. He did not have enough star power in his body, and the Void Dragon Sky-Raising Break consumed an extremely high amount of energy. As a result, he could not use the Void Dragon Sky-Raising Break again to offset a part of the giant star's power. Therefore, he decided to use the Martial Dragon Shield and the Heavenly Sacred Halberd for defense. These two methods combined should be able to block half of the opponent's attack power. The injuries this time are likely to be more serious than before, but in order to conserve star power, this is the only way. But there is also an advantage to being more seriously injured. That is, more star power will corrode into my body. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. He raised his hand to form the Martial Dragon Shield, and the Heavenly Sacred Halberd's golden light also enveloped his body. The giant light purple star fell with a loud bang, heavily bombarding Kong Shinmu's body, and even completely enveloped his divine dragon body. The terrifying power wreaked havoc in the entire 5th floor of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. Kong Shinmu's whole body felt as if it was on fire, and the pain of being torn apart constantly came from all over his body. "Devour for me!" The devouring power covered his whole body, and once again began to devour the surrounding star power. After this, he had a clear feeling that his resistance to the star power had finally reached a certain level. Not only that, but his injuries had all healed, and he had also devoured the remaining star power and transformed it into his devouring innate ability. "My condition is completely recovered." Kong Shin-mu, who had transformed into a divine dragon body, roared, and flew up from the star power flow on the ground. His eyes seemed to emit the color of cosmic energy. The power of the stars was burning in his body, causing his resistance to cosmic energy to reach a higher level. Moreover, his internal injuries and energy had all recovered. It was time to turn the situation around. The opponent was in existence at the 5th level of the Nirvana Tribulation realm. Although there was no Nirvana force in the Origin Dragon martial skill that he had cultivated to the heaven level, it was 5 times stronger than Kong Shin-mu's talent power. But even so, Kong Shin-mu had relied on various means to persist until now. For others, this was simply unbelievable and impossible. Even Dragon Emperor Yen had not been able to pass through this level back then, let alone others. But now, Kong Shin-mu had withstood the Star Dragon's attacks again and again, and in the process, devoured and absorbed the opponent's power, thereby increasing his resistance to the opponent's power. At this moment, he had risen. In his peak state, Kong Shin-mu's whole body was emitting the golden light of the heavenly sacred halberd, which once again merged with the dragon-grade dragon weapon. Void Dragon Sky Raising Break. Kong Shin-mu began to fly towards the supergiant star that the opponent was condensing, and with the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, he attacked the opponent's giant star. The terrifying devouring power instantly destroyed the giant star that was condensing. The star power continued to flow, spread, and explode on the entire 5th level of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. But Kong Shin-mu ignored the star power. Even if he had no defensive means, the star power could only tear a small wound on his body. Moreover, the star power was quickly devoured by Kong Shin-mu and transformed into his own strength and the essence of his flesh and blood. Chapter 4100. The Star Dragon had fallen into a disadvantageous position. However, this illusory dragon warrior would not change its battle strategy because of this. To it, the best way to destroy Kong Shin-mu was to use its terrifying means to constantly bombard him. However, it did not know that Kong Shin-mu's resistance to the innate talent of the Star Dragon had reached an extremely high level under its constant attacks. Even the heaven-grade Origin Dragon martial technique could not cause much damage to Kong Shin-mu. So much so that Kong Shin-mu did not even need to use the martial dragon shield to resist the opponent's attacks. Under the attacks of the giant stars, Kong Shin-mu continued to devour the power of the Star Dragon. After overcoming the most difficult stage at the beginning, Jiang Shenwu's chances of victory in this battle had finally been reversed. Kill! He finally soared into the sky. The devouring power all over his body turned into a shadow dragon sky propping breaker, which bombarded the illusory dragon warrior from all directions in the form of a black dragon cannon. The opponent's defense of the Star Dragon was still impenetrable, but Kong Shin-mu was not in a hurry. In any case, the opponent could no longer pose much of a threat to him, and he could rely on the devouring power to continuously recover his injuries and energy. A stalemate. Kong Shin-mu knew that it would be a long stalemate. He could not cause too much damage to the opponent, and at the same time the opponent could not hurt him too much either. It could only cause him a relatively small amount of damage, but this kind of damage was nothing to Kong Shin-mu. As long as he devoured the opponent's innate talent of the Star Dragon, he could recover from his injuries as quickly as possible and recover the energy he had consumed. Kong Shin-mu could continue fighting, but the opponent's defense could only continue to be consumed and could not be replenished. However, Kong Shin-mu soon remembered something. The reality was not as smooth as he had imagined. This was because he discovered that even though the illusion dragon martialist was constantly using cosmic energy, the energy within its body hadn't been exhausted in the slightest. The reason for this was that the illusion dragon martialist was the incarnation of the entire Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. As long as the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower existed, the energy within its body wouldn't be completely exhausted. This discovery made Kong Shin-mu rather depressed. In other words, with his current offensive ability, he wouldn't even be able to grind his opponent to death. Unless he could destroy his opponent's Star Force defense in one fell swoop, if this battle were to continue, neither side would be able to do anything to the other. This won't do. I must pass this challenge. Kong Shinmu gritted his teeth and continued to attack. At the same time, he devoured the innate talent power of the star universe. To Kong Shinmu, the only way to break out of this situation was through the void dragon raising the sky. He had already cultivated this origin source dragon martial technique to the earth grade, but its power was still unable to break through his opponent's cosmic force defense. Therefore, Kong Shinmu had to comprehend it to a higher level in order to have a chance of breaking through his opponent's defense. I'll try to comprehend it first and break through to the dragon grade. If that still doesn't work, then I can only try to break through to the heaven grade. No matter what, even if it takes a month, 2 months, or even a year, I must improve in this flame dragon sacred tower. Kong Shinmu had great determination in his heart. With a resolute look in his eyes, he began to enter a long stalemate with the star dragon. Even if the star dragon's various origin source dragon martial techniques were all cultivated to the heaven grade, they still couldn't cause fatal damage to Kong Shinmu. As time passed, Kong Shinmu's resistance to cosmic energy became stronger and stronger, and the more he wouldn't be broken by his opponent. But at the same time, Kong Shinmu couldn't do anything to his opponent. He had thought that he could grind his opponent to death, but the opponent's energy was obviously endless. The terrifying power possessed by the Super Shenron, and the Flame Dragon's sacred tower it had built, was completely beyond Kong Shinmu's imagination. Even if he stayed here for a whole year, the power he could consume would probably not be enough to exhaust his opponent. Therefore, he could only defeat his opponent in one fell swoop and try to improve the attack-type origin source dragon martial technique that he cultivated. The stalemate between the two began. 3 months had passed. Dragon Emperor Yen had even returned from the Sealing Dragon Abyss to Yen Dragon Emperor City. But he still hadn't heard the news that Kong Shinmu had broken out of the Flame Dragon's sacred tower. This made Dragon Emperor Yen, as well as many dragon warriors who were paying attention to Kong Shinmu, feel a little puzzled. Because they all wanted to know where Kong Shinmu had gone. In the Flame Dragon's sacred tower, even if one failed and was killed by the illusory dragon warrior, it was completely an illusion. In the end, it would appear at the exit of the Flame Dragon's sacred tower and announce that the dragon warrior had failed the challenge. But after Kong Shinmu stepped into the Flame Dragon's sacred tower, only Dragon Emperor Yen felt that he had successfully passed the test of the 4th floor and reached the challenge of the Star Dragon on the 5th floor. After that, there had been no news of him. When there was someone in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower, no one else could enter. Therefore, Dragon Emperor Yen still let people try to step into the Flame Dragon's sacred tower. Unfortunately, no one had been able to step into it in the past 3 months. This made Dragon Emperor Yen even more curious. Could it be that Kong Shinmu had been in a stalemate with the illusory dragon warrior? This was the only possibility for such a situation to occur. However, Dragon Emperor Yen couldn't figure out how Kong Shinmu, a dragon warrior at the 9th level of the divine martial realm, could persist in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower for 3 months. This wasn't a short period of time. Even he, Dragon Emperor Yen, couldn't fight for such a long time. The energy in his body had long been exhausted. It is said that what he comprehended is the power of devouring. Could it be that he will only be satisfied after devouring all the energy in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower? Dragon Emperor Yen looked up information related to Kong Shinmu and knew that Kong Shinmu cultivated the original body-refining dragon martial technique. Moreover, he also cultivated the 2nd-grade dragon martial technique, the Dragon Martial God's Shield. Adding all this information together, it could be seen that Kong Shinmu's defensive ability was extremely terrifying. Coupled with the recovery ability of the power of devouring, could it be that this guy was really in a stalemate in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower? Dragon Emperor Yen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that the illusory dragon warrior in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower wouldn't exhaust its energy at all unless the power of the entire Flame Dragon's sacred tower was exhausted. However, the Flame Dragon's sacred tower was a building left behind by a super divine dragon. How could it be exhausted by a boy at the 9th level of the divine martial realm? Not to mention a few months, even if it was 100 years or 1,000 years, it wouldn't be exhausted. The energy in the body of a super divine dragon, compared to the dragon warriors in the dragon martial continent, was completely endless. No one knew to what extent Kong Shinmu's battle in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower had progressed. Chapter 4101. Time flew by. After the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty occupied the Sealing Dragon Abyss, the Dragon Emperor sent out a message for some of the more talented dragon warriors to go to the Sealing Dragon Abyss and stay there for a month. During this period of cultivation, under the influence of the mysterious power, they could directly increase their strength by at least 20%. Whether it was the innate power of the divine martial arts realm dragon warriors or the nirvana power of the nirvana tribulation realm dragon warriors, they could all be sublimated here. It was not to increase their strength, but to become stronger. Any power, after being affected by the mysterious power of the Sealing Dragon Abyss, would increase its power by about 20%. This was the effect that could be achieved by staying near the Sealing Dragon Abyss for a month. After the defeat of the Northern Chill Dragon Country, it was said that the Northern Chill Dragon Emperor and the Yen Dragon Emperor had fought. In the end, the Yen Dragon Emperor defeated the Northern Chill Dragon Emperor and seriously injured him. Only then did the Northern Chill Dragon Country finally give up on the idea of conquering the Sealing Dragon Abyss. As a result, the overall strength of the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty increased at an extremely fast rate. Shi Yueying, Jiang Liuxue, and even the Holy Dragon Shi Tao had all gone to the Sealing Dragon Abyss and experienced the baptism of the mysterious power. Basically, all the dragon warriors of the Holy Dragon level and above in the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty had gone to the Sealing Dragon Abyss. Talented junior dragon warriors like Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue naturally had such an opportunity. It was important to note that after experiencing the baptism of the mysterious power, the dragon warriors' bodies would have traces of this mysterious power. In the future, when they cultivated and improved their strength, they would also be sublimated by the mysterious power and improve their strength. In other words, as long as a dragon warrior experienced the baptism of the mysterious power, their strength would permanently increase by 20%. This was an extremely terrifying number. This was equivalent to the dragon warriors of the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty experiencing the baptism of the mysterious power, and basically, they could crush and defeat the dragon warriors of the same realm from other countries. The entire Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty was brimming with joy. Basically, every dragon warrior was excited about the opportunity to improve their strength. After all, there were not many opportunities to improve their strength, especially for existences like the Holy Dragon Shi Tao. It was most likely that they had not improved their strength for more than 10 years. Now that his strength had increased by 20%, how could he not be excited? However, Shi Tao was more concerned about something else. That was Kong Xinmu. Since the day Kong Xinmu left, he never appeared in front of them again. Almost a year had passed, and the news from the Yen Dragon Emperor was that Kong Xinmu was still challenging and training in the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon. Holy Dragon Shi Tao found Dragon King and asked him about the situation in the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. Dragon King also wanted to know why Kong Xinmu had not returned. After all, Kong Xinmu was a genius who had appeared in the Dragon Prison Realm under his rule. If he died, it would be a pity. If he rose and became a strong expert, he would have another backer in the future. He told Shi Tao about the situation in the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, but he had only challenged the 3rd floor and did not know the situation in the next 2 floors. According to the news from the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty, it seems that Kong Xinmu may be able to pass the 5th challenge of the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon. This is really rare. However, I did not expect this challenge to last for so long. Due to the matter with Kong Xinmu, the relationship between Dragon King and the Holy Dragon Shi Tao was getting better. Therefore, the Holy Dragon Shi Tao was likely to be qualified to challenge the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon after a period of time. It was a pity that the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty had already accumulated a lot of people who were qualified. Because Kong Xinmu had not come out of the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, others could not step into the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon to challenge it. Some of those who could challenge the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon according to the qualification threshold set by the Dragon Emperor were basically waiting outside the Holy Tower for a year. Once Kong Xinmu came out of the Holy Tower, they had to be the first to step in. After all, only one person could enter the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower at a time, and there were already 4 or 5 people who had obtained the qualification to challenge the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower in the past year. They had to snatch the first spot after Jiang Shenwu came out. The earlier they entered the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, the better it would be for them to improve their strength. Otherwise, they would have to wait for others to improve before they could enter. How frustrating would that be? In any case, outside the Holy Tower, the 4 or 5 genius dragon martial artists who had obtained the Holy Tower's challenge qualification token were already quite displeased with Jiang Shenwu. These few were all existences who possessed the Holy Dragon's inheritance blood essence. As long as they passed the challenge of the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, they could become Dragon King. This was a qualitative change, a fundamental improvement. However, because Kong Shinmu had been staying in the holy tower of the Yen Dragon, they could not take this step. As time went by, this made the Dragon Emperor a little annoyed. After all, the holy tower of the Yen Dragon was the foundation for the Dragon Emperor dynasty to improve. If the holy tower of the Yen Dragon was occupied by Kong Shinmu, the other holy dragons could not be promoted to Dragon King. Then, the overall strength of the Dragon Emperor dynasty would soon be weakened. Although they had recently obtained the Sealing Dragon Abyss, if they did not have a way to promote a holy dragon to Dragon King, they would still suffer a considerable loss. 1 year limit. The Dragon Emperor finally ordered, giving Kong Shinmu 1 year is definitely enough. If he still cannot pass the challenge and come out, then I, the Dragon Emperor, will forcibly close the holy tower of the Yen Dragon and teleport him out. With the Dragon Emperor's words, everyone was waiting for the arrival of that year. As the 1 year deadline approached, more and more dragon warriors gathered around the holy tower of the Yen Dragon. They were paying attention to the situation here every day, hoping that one day Kong Shinmu would come out and let them see what level Kong Shinmu had reached. This Kong Shinmu is said to be extremely talented. He has already passed the 4th level of the holy tower of the Yen Dragon. He should be challenging the 5th level now. How can the 5th level be so easy? In my opinion, he must have used some method to be stuck in there. It is said that before he entered, he inherited the essence blood of the Sky Dragon level. It is really a waste for the holy tower to let such a person enter. Don't be sarcastic at this time. If not for this Kong Shinmu, we might not have been able to get the baptism of the mysterious power of the Sealing Dragon Abyss so smoothly. That's right. You have already been baptized by the mysterious power of the Sealing Dragon Abyss, right? You actually don't know how to be grateful. You are really shameless. Chapter 4102. Inside the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower. On the 5th floor. Kong Shinmu had been in a stalemate with the Star Dragon for nearly a year. In fact, Kong Shinmu had even forgotten how long he had been here. He only knew that he had been constantly devouring his opponent's power to display the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, the Origin Dragon martial technique. When he had cultivated to the human level and earth level, his speed had been very fast. However, when he wanted to upgrade the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break to the dragon level, the speed was extremely slow. It took him a total of 3 months to finally break through the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break to the dragon level. However, to Kong Shinmu's disappointment, even though the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break had broken through to the dragon level, there was no way for it to break through the Star Dragon's defense barrier of the illusion of the Star Dragon. The opponent's power came from the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower. And Kong Shinmu's power came from the opponent. The opponent released it to kill Kong Shinmu, but in the end, it was all devoured by Kong Shinmu. To this day, Kong Shinmu did not even need to use any means. He could directly use his physical body to resist the opponent's attack, and he would not suffer too much damage. Only a small part of the Star Dragon's innate power would corrode into his body and become nutrients that he constantly devoured. With this Star Dragon's power, Kong Shinmu had actually been able to persist in the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower until now. It has been almost a year. But in this year, I have been using the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, and I have already mastered this Origin Dragon martial technique. It should not be far from the heaven level. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. If a dragon martial technique was cultivated to the heaven level, it would be possible to copy and carve out its overall structure, and then create a secret cultivation manual for the dragon martial technique. If it was an ordinary dragon martial technique, it would be fine, but the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break was the Origin Dragon martial technique, which was also what outsiders called a Grade 1 dragon martial technique. At the same time, Kong Shinmu's chaotic dragon body had also reached the edge of breaking through to the dragon level. If he had not devoured too much Star Dragon's power, the opponent would not have been able to cause too much damage to him, and his chaotic dragon body would have long been upgraded to the dragon level. At that time, Kong Shinmu would really be able to withstand the opponent's attack easily. This Star Cosmic Dragon is too strong. I'm the only one who can fight for such a long time. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be worn down to death. Kong Shinmu shook his head. He didn't know how much time was left until the 1-year deadline, but he knew that he had to hurry up. This was because he had guessed that the Yen Dragon Emperor would not allow him to remain here for such a long time. In the eyes of the world, about a year was probably the most that the Yen Dragon Emperor could give him. Jiang Shenwu knew very well that the entire Flame Dragon's sacred tower was controlled by the Yen Dragon Emperor. As long as the Yen Dragon Emperor allowed him to leave, he would definitely leave. At that time, he would only be able to obtain the divine dragon blood essence from the first 4 floors. Kong Shinmu had worked so hard until now, how could he be willing to give up? Thus, he executed his strongest move, the Origin Dragon martial technique of the Void Dragon raising the heavens break. At the same time, the devouring force in his body roared and surged out. In fact, he had been working hard for a long time. Ever since his Void Dragon's sky-piercing break had broken through to the dragon level, he had been unable to break through the Star Dragon's defense. Thus, he had come up with this plan. After all, it wasn't easy to raise the Void Dragon's sky-raising break to the heaven grade. Therefore, he kept using his devouring power to attach to his opponent's star power barrier. As the Void Dragon raises the sky attacked, the devouring power took advantage of the opportunity to devour some of the opponent's cosmic energy barrier. In this way, the other party's star force barrier was still in the process of slowly weakening. However, it was far from the level where Kong Shinmu would break through. Kong Shinmu constantly used all his strength to execute the Void Dragon's sky-raising the sky-breaking break. Normally, he wouldn't have wasted so much of the strength in his body. After all, executing the Void Dragon's sky-raising the sky-breaking break once would consume 1/3 of the energy in his body. Using it 3 times would deplete the energy in his body. However, his opponent was now constantly absorbing the power of the sacred Fire Dragon Tower, which allowed Kong Shinmu to execute the Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break every 4 or 5 breaths. Kong Shinmu had maintained this frequency for nearly a year. Now, he finally had a feeling that the Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break would break through to the heaven grade. This was a feeling, a kind of intuition. At the same time, Kong Shinmu sensed that the Black Dragon's consciousness hidden deep within his body seemed to be leaking out more of its devouring power. This devouring power was a special kind of devouring power. This special devouring power would occasionally devour the power of the Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break that Kong Shinmu executed. At first, Kong Shinmu found it strange. However, not long after, he realized that every time this special devouring power appeared and devoured the Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break that he executed, his comprehension of the Origin Source Dragon martial technique would increase a little. Although it was just a little, it was equivalent to at least 10 days of comprehension. With the help of this special devouring power, Kong Shinmu was finally able to touch the heaven grade level of the Origin Source Dragon martial technique. However, he always felt that something was missing from the heaven grade Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break. It was a crucial thing. Without this crucial inspiration, he would never be able to break through to the true heaven grade level of the Origin Source Dragon martial technique. On this day, after another special devouring power appeared, Kong Shinmu's comprehension of the Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break finally reached the limit. There was a bottleneck that prevented Kong Shinmu from breaking through the Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break to the heaven grade level. However, at this moment, the might of his Void Dragon sky-shattering Origin Dragon martial technique had finally reached a higher level. This level made his eyes light up. He had a very special feeling that if he executed the Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break now, he would finally be able to break through the defense of the Star Universe Dragon. Kill! Kong Shinmu shouted. Almost at the same time, he condensed 3 pitch-black Void Dragons. These 3 Void Dragons released a pitch-black light cannon with devouring power at the Star Universe Dragon at the same time. A total of 24 pitch-black lights landed on the illusory Star Universe Dragon. The Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break had been executed 3 times at the same time. This was what Kong Shinmu had comprehended so far. Basically, very few people could obtain this kind of method. One had to be extremely familiar with this kind of dragon martial technique or even be close to the heaven grade in order to obtain it. But now, Kong Shinmu was familiar with the Void Dragon sky-raising the sky-breaking break. After nearly a year of continuous training and breakthroughs, Kong Shinmu had mastered this Origin Source Dragon martial technique to an extremely terrifying degree. He was only one bottleneck away from the heaven grade level. Finally, there was a loud and crisp bang. Chapter 4103. The defense of the Star Dragon was eventually broken by Kong Shinmu. However, this did not mean that Kong Shinmu had defeated his opponent. This was because the light of the power of the universe continued to flicker on his opponent's body, and he quickly condensed another barrier of the power of the universe. This made Kong Shinmu almost die of anger. He had finally broken the barrier of the power of the universe, so how could another barrier be condensed? I have to devour the power inside the star dragon. The energy it uses comes from the sacred tower of the fire dragon, but there is still the essence of life and flesh in its body. If I devour the essence, I can weaken it. Kong Shinmu knew very well what his chances of winning were. Therefore, he continued to display the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break. The terrifying power of the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break continued to erupt on the 5th floor of the sacred tower of the fire dragon. The defensive barrier of the star dragon was broken, and its attacks were not as fierce as before. This also caused the power of the universe that Kong Shinmu devoured to be a little less than before, and the number of times he used the Origin Dragon Sky Raising Break was also decreasing. I can't go on like this. Jiang Shenwu's heart jolted as he thought of an idea. This was the first time he took the initiative to show weakness. He released the devouring power in his body, and let a part of the power of the universe that he had devoured flow away. Then, he was bombarded by the opponent's giant stars, and his whole body was suddenly seriously injured. It seemed that because he was seriously injured, the star dragon became excited and continued to display its techniques. The power of the universe continued to condense streams of light and stars, bombarding the body of the seriously injured Kong Shinmu on the ground. Good. As expected, Kong Shinmu was pleasantly surprised. The opponent once again continued to attack, wanting to kill him and leave the sacred tower of the fire dragon. However, the devouring power that Kong Shinmu had just released was just right, so he would never be killed by the opponent's means. It also happened to lure the opponent to continue to display the dragon martial technique, thereby releasing more power of the universe for Kong Shinmu to devour. Devour! Kong Shinmu cried out in his heart. The pitch-black devouring power covered his divine dragon body, constantly devouring the power of the universe. This innate power of the universe was not used to increase his resistance against the power of the universe, but was used to restore the energy within his body, as well as heal the serious injuries within his body. In this way, Kong Shinmu would be seriously injured every time, but he would not be killed no matter what. Moreover, he would have enough energy to continuously perform the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, the Origin Dragon Martial Technique. Kong Shinmu executed 3 Origin Dragon Martial Techniques at the same time. Under the bombardment of the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, the other party's astral energy barrier vanished again and again. Kong Shinmu took advantage of the moment when his opponent's Star Force barrier disappeared, and before it could condense again to corrode his opponent's body with his devouring power. Although only a small amount of Star Universe innate ability could invade his body each time, as time passed, more than enough devouring power was accumulated in his body. One day, Jiang Shenwu finally unleashed the devouring power that he had been hiding for a long time. Devour! The terrifying devouring power engulfed the power within his opponent's body in an instant. The illusory star dragon, which was originally full of vigor and vitality, became dispirited and listless in the next moment. It could not even condense its Star Force barrier quickly. Kong Shinmu immediately followed up with the Origin Dragon Martial Technique, the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break. Die! The pitch-black devouring power turned into 24 pitch-black dragon cannons. As if summoned by the god of death, they landed on the body of the star dragon. After weakening his opponent with the devouring power, Kong Shinmu's attack landed on his opponent's body. His opponent was immediately unable to resist. The illusory star dragon finally began to decompose at this moment, turning into the purest spirit energy of the world. The spirit energy of the world was naturally recovered by the sacred tower of the flame dragon. However, as the body of the star dragon decomposed, Kong Shinmu raised his head and found that the sacred tower of the flame dragon had already reached the top floor. The 5th floor was the last floor. That's right. There's no point in setting up more floors, because on the Dragon Martial continent, basically no one can pass the 5th floor. Even I am just an exception. Kong Shinmu knew very well that part of the power he relied on already came from the Black Dragon's consciousness. This was not a power that belonged to the Dragon Martial continent. It was definitely a terrifying power that came from somewhere else. A beam of fiery light was finally emitted from the surroundings of the sacred tower of the flame dragon. It gathered and shrouded the place where Jiang Shenwu was. There seemed to be countless dragons flickering within the fiery light. However, they were all extremely tiny dragons. Divine Dragon Blood Essence. Kong Shinmu immediately understood what this was. He spread his arms wide and did not resist the brilliance of the flames that contained the tiny roaming dragon surrounding his body. A scorching heat instantly flowed along his body and integrated into the divine dragon blood essence in Jiang Shenwu's body. His bloodline was originally the inheritance blood essence of a heavenly dragon. But at this moment, after being burned and evolved by the scarlet flames, his divine dragon heritage blood essence finally underwent a transformation. It was as though he had devoured enough divine dragon corpses. That feeling was a feeling of metamorphosis, a feeling that he was about to advance. He was excited and excited. His continuous perseverance and hard work for this year had not been in vain. He finally broke through the 5th floor of the sacred tower of the flame dragon and obtained enough divine dragon blood essence. Advancement, breakthrough. Kong Shinmu felt the extremely obvious changes in his body. From the heavenly dragon blood essence to the divine dragon blood essence. For Kong Shinmu, this part of the advancement would require him to devour at least 1,000 Dragon King-level divine dragon corpses. In the entire divine dragon tomb of the Flame Dragon Emperor dynasty, there might not be so many Dragon King-level divine dragon corpses. But now, in this 1 year, Kong Shinmu had achieved this level of transformation. This was an astonishing transformation. He could easily feel that after he transformed into a black dragon, his body length continued to increase from 100 zhang. Soon, it reached 200 zhang, and then 300 zhang. In between, there was actually a span of 3 times. This was the divine dragon blood essence. The divine dragon's inheritance was divided into different grades, and the grades were very clear. A mortal dragon was 10 zhang, a true dragon was 300 zhang, a heavenly dragon was 100 zhang, and a divine dragon was 300 zhang. This was the change in appearance. At the same time, Kong Shinmu's physical strength had increased a lot. Most importantly, the strength of the talent in his body had increased by more than 3 times. My strength has skyrocketed. Kong Shinmu clenched his fists and transformed into a dragon again. This time, he became a giant dragon more than 300 zhang long. He was even more powerful than ordinary divine dragon powerhouses. In the next moment, he felt the surrounding flame power gradually dissipate. He seemed to have been transported outside the sacred tower of the flame dragon. Chapter 4104. Kong Shinmu had advanced from a sky dragon to a sacred dragon. This was practically reaching the heavens in a single bound. Some geniuses could obtain sky dragon blood essence directly from the coiling dragon pillar during the flame dragon ritual. However, sacred dragon inheritance blood essence had to be slowly accumulated from sky dragon blood essence. By collecting treasures of heaven and earth like dragon chi crystals, a dragon warrior's divine dragon blood essence could be upgraded. Although the speed was slow, it was still possible to upgrade a sky dragon to a sacred dragon inheritance blood essence after a few decades. For example, Sacred Dragon Shi Tao had obtained many opportunities to upgrade from Sky Dragon Blood Essence to Sacred Dragon Blood Essence. He had collected treasures of heaven and earth like dragon chi crystals, and it took him a full 25 years to finally upgrade. As for Kong Shinmu, it had only taken him a year. Training in the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon was extremely difficult for ordinary people. Furthermore, it was impossible for them to experience the tempering of the essence blood of the divine dragons in the Sacred Tower again in a short period of time. It would take at least 10 years before they could experience it again. In addition, too much essence was needed to upgrade from a sky dragon to a sacred dragon. Therefore, generally speaking, very few dragon warriors would challenge the Sacred Tower during the Sky Dragon Inheritance Blood Essence stage. Even if they passed the 3rd floor, they would not be able to upgrade from a sky dragon to a sacred dragon. However, from a sacred dragon to a Dragon King stage, the amount of divine dragon essence needed was not that much. Most importantly, from a sacred dragon to a Dragon King stage, it could only be upgraded through the power of the Sacred Tower. Even dragon chi crystals were basically useless to a divine dragon blood essence dragon martial artist at the divine dragon level. Therefore, Kong Shinmu's current situation was the first in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's court. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at Kong Shinmu, who came out of the Sacred Tower with a sacred dragon aura. That black dragon body was more than 1,000 feet long, an existence that surpassed ordinary sacred dragons. Obviously, Kong Shinmu had actually challenged the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower. Dragon Emperor Yen was nearby at this moment. This person was a middle-aged man wearing a fiery red robe. At this moment, he was standing on top of a tall building in the distance. Behind him were 2 of the 12 flame dragon envoys. The 2 of them narrowed their eyes when they saw a pitch-black dragon coming out of the sacred tower of the flame dragon. Lord Dragon Emperor. This kid is really as expected. He actually broke through the 5th level of the holy tower of fire dragon. When he brought us to the bottom of the ice layer of the dragon sealing abyss, I already felt that he was extraordinary. I didn't expect him to achieve such a magnificent feat. The 2 Yen dragon envoys looked a little incredulous at this moment, but it seemed to be within their expectations. They were originally quite optimistic about Kong Shinmu. Now, Kong Shinmu's performance could be considered to have verified their previous thoughts. This kid had the potential to become a super powerhouse. Unfortunately, now that he has become a holy dragon, it won't be so easy for him to reach the level of Dragon King. Dragon Emperor Yen shook his head. This may not be a good thing for him. The 2 flame dragon envoys didn't say anything. After all, this wasn't just Dragon Emperor Yan's judgment. Mainly, it was what they themselves thought too. The best time to upgrade the sacred tower of Fire Dragon was when the Holy Dragon reached the level of Dragon King. Now, if Kong Shinmu wanted to enter the sacred tower of Fire Dragon again, he would have to wait at least 10 years. During this period, the power in the sacred tower of Fire Dragon would not be able to refine his essence and blood, unless he can step into the sacred tower of another country. One of the flame dragon envoys thought to himself. However, he couldn't say this out loud. Under what circumstances could Kong Shinmu enter the sacred tower of another country? There was only one possibility, and that was treason. Therefore, Dragon Emperor Yen definitely didn't want to see this happen. Let's go and welcome his appearance. Dragon Emperor Yen nodded in satisfaction at Kong Shinmu's appearance. I originally planned to wait a few hours before closing the sacred tower. I didn't expect him to come out in such a short time. As Dragon Emperor Yen flew towards the sacred tower of Fire Dragon, all the dragon martialists around him looked at him with respect and admiration. They only had respect for Dragon Emperor Yen. And Kong Shinmu naturally saw the 3 majestic figures flying over from afar. Dragon Emperor Yen is here. With a thought, Kong Shinmu reverted from his pitch-black divine dragon body to his human form. Even in his human form, the essence and blood in his body were still in a boiling state. The boiling divine dragon essence and blood in his body had elevated him from the sky dragon level to the holy dragon level. The refinement of his essence and blood in the sacred tower of Fire Dragon had increased his strength by several times. Therefore, even though he was only at the 9th tier of the divine martial realm, he could still easily win against an inheritor of the sky dragon essence and blood in the 4th or 5th tier of the nirvana tribulation realm. The opponent's nirvana power would be easily devoured by Kong Shinmu's devouring power. No matter what kind of nirvana power it was, as long as it wasn't as strong as Kong Shinmu's devouring power, it would be devoured. Now, Kong Shinmu's attention should be on opponents of the same level, and that was other existences with divine dragon essence and blood at the holy dragon level. Holy Dragon Shi Tao naturally couldn't be regarded as an opponent by Kong Shinmu because his cultivation level was too high. Even though they were both divine dragon essence and blood, Shi Tao's nirvana power could easily crush Kong Shinmu. However, in the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, those who could reach the divine dragon essence and blood of the holy dragon level were basically not young anymore. After all, advancing from a sky dragon to a holy dragon required a huge amount of accumulation. Even if a father wanted to collect all the treasures of heaven and earth like dragon chi crystals for his children so that his children could absorb the power directly, it was basically impossible because there were too few dragon chi crystals on the market. Generally speaking, in order to advance from a sky dragon to a holy dragon level, one needed many fortuitous encounters, and such fortuitous encounters were basically impossible to collect. Without any fortuitous encounters, it was impossible to advance from a sky dragon to a holy dragon level. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible to rely on dragon chi crystals. If there are no other junior holy dragons, my opponents will be those of the older generation. However, which of these older dragon martial artists isn't at least a nirvana tribulation existence? Kong Shinmu was a little distressed. However, since he had become stronger, he didn't need to think about who would be his opponent for the time being. In any case, he would treat whoever stood in his way as an opponent. Soon, the Dragon Emperor Yen brought 2 familiar Yen Dragon envoys to Kong Shinmu. Congratulations! Your divine dragon essence has advanced from a sky dragon to a holy dragon. You've challenged the holy tower's 5th level, which is beyond my imagination. You should know that even I didn't pass the test of the 5th level in the past. Chapter 4105. No one knew about such a thing. Not even the Yen Dragon Emperor had passed the 5th level of the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower? I have already accepted anyone who can pass the 4th level of the Sacred Tower as a Flame Dragon envoy. As of today, there are a total of 12 Flame Dragon envoys. Other than them, the rest can only barely pass the 3rd level. Dragon Emperor Yen said this to Kong Shinmu alone. Obviously, he did not want others to know about this. However, Kong Shinmu was already shocked. He did not expect that he could pass the 5th level of the Sacred Tower that even Dragon Emperor failed to pass. This makes me very curious. What kind of talent is your devouring power? Dragon Emperor Yen smiled faintly. But no matter what, it is the honor of our Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty to have a genius like you. Kong Shinmu, come with me. There is something I hope you can do. After saying this, Dragon Emperor Yen let Kong Shinmu follow him out of the Sacred Tower. After they left, the dragon martialists who had been waiting to enter the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower would naturally be able to enter. However, with the matter of Jiang Shenwu breaking through to the 5th level, no matter who entered the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower in the future, they would probably want to try. Although they basically did not even have the chance to pass the 4th level, everyone always felt that their strength was tyrannical. This would not change. In fact, the number of dragon martial artists who could pass the 3rd level of the Sacred Tower every year was less than half of those who stepped into the Sacred Tower. In other words, their success rate was basically only 50%. If they could not even pass the 3rd level, then they would not even be able to absorb the essence of the divine dragon blood. It was basically equivalent to stepping into the Sacred Tower for nothing. This kind of thing completely depended on talent. Soon, Kong Shinmu followed Dragon Emperor Yen and stepped into the palace of Yen Dragon Emperor. This palace belonged to Yen Dragon Emperor alone. It was built on the top of a mountain near Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. It was surrounded by clouds and lightning. If not for Dragon Emperor Yen, Kong Shinmu would not have been able to come to this place at all. Arriving here, Kong Shinmu became a little vigilant. After all, he still had the aura of the Heaven Awakening Dragon. This devouring power probably came from the consciousness of the Black Dragon in his body. If this Dragon Emperor Yen wanted to take the opportunity to attack him, Kong Shinmu would not be able to resist at all. He could only escape by summoning the Heaven Awakening Dragon immediately. Of course, this possibility was not high. However, Kong Shinmu had to be prepared. He had no understanding of the Flame Dragon Emperor. Alright, now that we are here, I will tell you one thing. Yen Dragon Emperor Yan's tone became a little serious. First of all, our Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty is not considered a very strong dynasty in this dragon martial continent. Apart from our Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, there are a total of thousands of dragon emperors in the entire dragon martial continent. Each dragon emperor has his own country. Of course, there are also 2 or 3 dragon emperors, or even more dragon emperors, who work together to build a country. The overall strength of such a country is much stronger than the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. Hearing this, Kong Shinmu was a little surprised. Although he had heard from the Heaven Awakening Dragon that the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty was not considered a strong dynasty in the dragon martial continent, he really did not expect that there would be thousands of dragon emperors in the entire dragon martial continent. If the territory of each dragon emperor country was as vast as the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, then how big would the entire dragon martial continent be? Originally, Kong Shinmu thought that the dragon martial continent was just a small place, like an isolated island in the vast sea, where super divine dragons and ancestral dragons could only stay for a while. But now, it seemed that the dragon martial continent was much bigger than he had imagined. In the eastern part of the entire dragon martial continent, which is also the area where our Dragon Emperor dynasty is located, there is a Dragon Emperor Academy. Yen Dragon Emperor Yen slowly said something that Kong Shinmu had never heard of before. Dragon Emperor Academy? Kong Shinmu was a little confused. This Dragon Emperor Academy, could it be that only experts of the Dragon Emperor level could step into it? Very soon, Yen Dragon Emperor Yen answered his doubts. Do you think that even I could not pass the 5th level of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower, but you could pass it, and that you are already a first-class genius in this world? Yen Dragon Emperor Yen chuckled softly. You don't ever think like that. That Dragon Emperor Academy is established to nurture the future Dragon Emperor, and the students are called Dong Huang Yongguo Academy. In this Donghuang Yonggu Academy, every student can pass the 5th level of the Holy Tower. These words made Kong Xinmu even more shocked. He had originally thought that he could only pass the 5th level of the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower with the Black Dragon's consciousness and devouring power. Apart from him, there should not be anyone else in this world who could do it, right? However, he did not expect the words of Yen Dragon Emperor Yen to be so shocking, and also made Kong Xinmu feel defeated. He had spent a whole year to pass the 5th level of the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower. If it was someone else who had passed the 5th level of the Holy Tower, wouldn't their speed be much faster than him? However, Kong Xinmu was not particularly discouraged. It seemed that there were many geniuses in this dragon martial continent, and there was even an existence like Donghuang Yonggu Academy. This would allow him to find a new opponent who could compete with him. When he came to challenge the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower, his understanding of the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break was only at the level of the human rank. The reason why he spent a year inside was naturally because he needed to spend time to improve his understanding of the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break. If he had reached the Earth rank before challenging the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower, he would not have needed such a long time. Moreover, after such a long period of challenge, his understanding of the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break was already infinitely close to the Heaven rank. He only needed one last opportunity to achieve the Heaven rank Origin Dragon Martial Technique. He had even cultivated the chaotic dragon body to the dragon rank, allowing his physical defense to reach an astonishing level. Yen Dragon Emperor Yan's words ignited a considerable desire in Kong Xinmu. He wanted to go to Donghuang Yonggu Academy and challenge the stronger and more talented dragon warriors. However, Kong Xinmu did not know if Yen Dragon Emperor Yen would let him go to Donghuang Yonggu Academy. You can now go to Donghuang Yonggu Academy and become one of them. Chapter 4106. Kong Xinmu did not know how old the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty was, but he definitely knew that it was an honor to be qualified to enter Donghuang Yonggu College. Should I go there directly? Kong Xinmu was a little confused. He did not know how to get to Donghuang Yonggu College. After all, this was a territory he had never come into contact with. Even in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, there would not be more than 10 people who knew about this. Don't worry. The Yen Dragon Emperor shook his head. I want to tell you about our dragon martial continent first. I'd like to hear the details. Kong Xinmu asked respectfully. Speaking of which, you seem to know that we are in the dragon martial continent? The Yen Dragon Emperor was a little confused and asked Kong Xinmu. I heard it by chance. I don't know where I heard it from. Naturally, Kong Xinmu could not say that he heard it from the Heaven Awakening Devil Dragon. After all, the relationship between the Yen Dragon Emperor and the Heaven Awakening Devil Dragon was very bad. If he told Kong Xinmu about the Heaven Awakening Devil Dragon, it would not do him any good. All right. The Yen Dragon Emperor did not ask further. Indeed, although ordinary people did not know about the Dragon Martial Continent, it was often recorded in some strange books. Therefore many people knew about it. Of course, not many people knew about Donghuang Yonggu College. As for this Dragon Martial Continent, it is said that it is the territory of a supreme divine dragon, the Dragon of Calamity. The Yen Dragon Emperor finally began to tell Kong Xinmu some secrets that ordinary people did not know. Dragon of Calamity? Supreme Divine Dragon? It was the first time Kong Xinmu had heard of these two names. The Supreme Divine Dragon is an existence above the Super Divine Dragon. Dragon Emperor Yen explained naturally. Above the Dragon Emperor, the Divine Dragon's blood essence can be refined to the extreme and fused into one's own bloodline to become a Super Divine Dragon. This super mystical dragon's strength was 100 times that of the Dragon Emperor of the same realm. They were on a completely different level. It can be said that any Super Divine Dragon has already transformed from a human into a dragon, a pure Divine Dragon. The goal of Donghuang Yonggu College is to cultivate more super mystical dragons. The reason why it's a Dragon Emperor student is that as long as you are qualified to enter Donghuang Yonggu College, you can at least achieve the level of the Dragon Emperor. So powerful. Kong Xinmu was a little shocked. He had never heard of these things before. Even the Heaven Opening Devil Dragon had never mentioned these things. Kong Xinmu thought to himself, could it be that the Heaven Opening Devil Dragon did not even know about these things? After all, he was a demon, and he had always lived in a remote corner like the Dragon Emperor Yen. The Dragon Emperor Yen and the other Dragon Emperors still communicated. while the heaven-opening devil dragon only interacted with the other demons for a while. Perhaps the demon realm really did not know about this. The Dragon Martial Continent was incomparably vast. The Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty and the Northern Chill Dragon Country were considered remote regions of the Dragon Emperor Kingdom. Nearby, there would also be places where demonic beasts like the heaven-opening devil realm lived. But in fact, the Dragon Martial Continent was the territory of the Supreme Divine Dragon, the Dragon of Calamity. The Supreme Divine Dragon would naturally not cultivate powerful demons in their own territories. Therefore, it would not be easy for these demonic beasts, including the heaven-opening devil dragon, to know the truth of the Dragon Martial Continent, because no one would tell them. Of course, their strength had reached the level of an ordinary Dragon Emperor. It was just that the heaven-opening devil realm was relatively remote, and no one would pay attention to them. The Dragon Emperor Yen and the other Dragon Emperors naturally wanted to get rid of them and occupy the heaven-opening devil realm. But it was obvious that they could not occupy so many demon realms by themselves. After all, the heaven-opening devil realm was only one of the demonic beasts' territories. If many demonic beasts joined forces, even the Dragon Emperor Kingdom would not be a match. Unless the Dragon Emperor, who was even more powerful than him, came to help. However, why would he come to help? These were some of the things that Jiang Xinwu was thinking about. No wonder the heaven-opening devil dragon cared so much about the black dragon's consciousness, and wanted to please me so that I could help him after I rose. Kong Xinmu shook his head. The heaven-opening devil dragon had always been very good to him. If there was a chance in the future, it would not be a big deal to help him. The key was that Kong Xinmu did not have that ability. His strength was not even as strong as the heaven-opening devil dragon. How could he help them? As for the Supreme Divine Dragon, it is an even more powerful existence. Even the Super Divine Dragon, whose bloodline has integrated with the blood essence of the Divine Dragon, cannot compare to a single hair of the Supreme Divine Dragon. The Dragon Emperor Yen continued to explain. We have only heard of the Dragon of Calamity. When I became the Dragon Emperor and my potential was exhausted, the Super Divine Dragon descended and helped me expand the Dragon Martial Continent. He built the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty and the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower for me to develop. Today there is finally an outcome. That is, you are qualified to go to Donghuang Yanggu College and try to become the Super Divine Dragon. The Dragon Emperor Yen had basically said what he wanted to say. What he knew was only limited to what he had learned so far. But after listening to it, Kong Xinmu basically understood the general situation. The Dragon Martial Continent was just a place to nurture the strong. The entire Dragon Martial Continent was created to nurture the Super Divine Dragon. How shocking was this? The originally high and mighty Dragon Emperor Yen was actually just one of the many Dragon Emperors, and he was considered one of the weaker ones among the Dragon Emperors. To Kong Xinmu, this was undoubtedly a huge blow. No matter what, you have to go to Donghuang Yanggu College. The Dragon Emperor Yen said to Kong Xinmu, however, it is not convenient for me to send you there personally. I can only give you a map. You can follow the map and go there yourself. Also, look, this is the seal of the East Emperor. Kong Xinmu followed the Dragon Emperor Yan's gaze and suddenly found that there was a rather complicated divine dragon seal on his wrist. This seal was a dragon's head. It was arrogant and had a shocking power. Where did it come from? Kong Xinmu did not know where the so-called seal of the East Emperor came from. Naturally, it is a gift from the Holy Tower of the Fire Dragon. The Dragon Emperor Yen smiled. In our Eastern Dragon Emperor Kingdom, as long as you pass the 5th level of the Holy Tower of the Fire Dragon, the seal of the East Emperor will appear on your wrist. All the dragon martial artists can use this seal of the East Emperor to enter Donghuang Yanggu College. I see. Kong Xinmu was secretly amazed. He did not notice when the seal of the East Emperor appeared on his wrist. Chapter 4107. The Sacred Tower of the Blazing Dragon, the Sacred Tower of the Northern Chill, and so on. The sacred towers were all created by the Super Shenron on the Longwu continent. Dragon martial artists who passed the 5th level of the Sacred Tower would have the seal of the East Emperor on their wrists. With that, they would be able to enter Donghuang Yanggu College. Of course, apart from Donghuang Yanggu College, the northern, western, and southern parts of the Longwu continent also had their own dragon martial academies. These dragon martial academies competed with each other, and they were the most transcendent existences on the continent. Kong Shinmu originally thought that the Super Shenron was only a legend. He did not expect it to be so close to him. If I go to Donghuang Yonggu College, I should have a chance to see the legendary Super Shenron. As for the Supreme Shenron, I probably won't have the chance to see it. Kong Shinmu thought for a while, but he was not discouraged. It was enough for him to have a springboard like Donghuang Yonggu College. In Donghuang Yonggu College, he should be able to obtain more cultivation resources, which would allow him to become stronger. When I go to Donghuang Yonggu College, I will definitely be able to become a Dragon Emperor. This is the most basic thing. However, I only have the inherited blood essence of a divine dragon, mainly because my cultivation level is too low. Kong Shinmu was still a little nervous. After all, his current strength was not weak compared to martial cultivators of the same level, but his absolute strength was definitely nothing in the entire continent. After all, he had not even reached the Nirvana Tribulation realm. Kong Shinmu, you can go do your own things now. When you are ready, it will be time for you to go. The Yen Dragon Emperor suddenly said to Kong Shinmu in a serious tone, when the time comes, I will prepare some gifts for you before I go. These gifts can help you improve your cultivation level. It is also the last thing I, the Yen Dragon Emperor, can do for you. Thank you, Dragon Emperor. Kong Shinmu respectfully bowed to express his thanks. He suddenly thought of something and asked, right, does His Excellency Dragon Emperor know anything about the Dragon Sealing Abyss? Dragon Sealing Abyss? It is said that you once stepped into the sealed Dragon Abyss. Also your father, Zhang Zizai, that peerless genius, also stepped into that place and disappeared in the end. Dragon Emperor Yen frowned. Yes. Kong Shinmu was a little disappointed. To be honest, I originally thought very highly of your father. I once thought of letting him challenge the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower of Fire Dragon, but unfortunately, he disappeared before I could invite him. Dragon Emperor Yen shook his head. As for this Dragon Sealing Abyss, I don't know much about it either. This place had existed a long time ago. In fact, in the beginning, there were even super mystical dragons that came down. In the end, even they could not see anything. I don't know what happened after that. This news surprised Kong Shinmu. Even super mystical dragons came to see the Dragon Sealing Abyss? Kong Shinmu pondered for a moment. The power in the Dragon Sealing Abyss came from the legendary ancestral dragon. Not to mention super mystical dragons, even the ruler of this mainland, the Dragon of Calamity, could not break the power in the Dragon Sealing Abyss. As for what was the situation in the Dragon Sealing Abyss and why it existed here, even Dragon Emperor Yen did not know, let alone the current Kong Shinmu. What a pity! If the Black Dragon's consciousness really came out from the Dragon Sealing Abyss, I might be able to find out what this Black Dragon's consciousness is. Kong Shinmu shook his head. He wanted to find out about this, but unfortunately, he could not find anyone to ask. For a place like the Dragon Sealing Abyss, it should be impossible for anyone to know the specific type of place in Donghuang Yonggu College. After all, no one had ever come to this place. In this war surrounding the Dragon Sealing Abyss, Kong Shinmu had entered the Dragon Sealing Abyss once. As a result, there was a mysterious power flowing out from the Dragon Sealing Abyss. This surprised Jiang Shenwu a little. What was the specific situation? If he could step into the Sealing Dragon Abyss again, perhaps. But he quickly shook his head. His father, Zhang Zizai, had warned him not to step into the Dragon Sealing Abyss before he obtained the power of the Ancestral Dragon, or with the help of the Ancestral Dragon. He believed that his father would not deceive him. Since he said so, if he stepped into it casually, it was very likely that he would die or be suppressed and sealed inside. Otherwise, why was this place called the Dragon Sealing Abyss? If it were not for Zhang Zizai's power, Kong Shinmu might have been trapped inside and died. Now, you should go back to the Dragon Prison Domain first. There is your family and people you care about there. Say goodbye to them and prepare to go to Donghuang Yonggu College. Yen Dragon Emperor said to Kong Shinmu. He waved his hand and sent him out of the palace on the mountain peak. In the blink of an eye, Kong Shinmu found that he had left the palace and returned to Yen Dragon Emperor City. 2 of the 12 Yen Dragon envoys appeared in front of him. These 2 people were still wearing black cloaks. One of them had a hoarse voice, but he was quite appreciative and expectant of Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu, let's go. Lord Dragon Emperor ordered us to send you back to the Dragon Prison Domain. Thank you, both of you. Kong Shinmu nodded and thanked the two. Then he began to think about what to do next. Before he set off for Donghuang Yonggu College, he definitely had to go to the Heaven Awakening Demon Realm. A year had not passed. The Heaven Awakening Demon Dragon should have gathered many treasures and prepared for Kong Shinmu. However, he should have received news that Kong Shinmu had not come out of the Yen Dragon's sacred tower. Since the Heaven Awakening Demon Dragon wants me to help you, I hope he will continue to be so obedient. Kong Shinmu thought. Then, he had to return to the Jiang clan to have a look, as well as the Shi clan's mansion in the Dragon Prison domain. There were people that Jiang Shinwu knew there, his family, his friends, and his friends who had gone through thick and thin with him. Kong Shinmu wanted to bid farewell to everyone. Under the guidance of the two Yen Dragon envoys, Kong Shinmu's speed was extremely fast. In a few days, he had already returned from the Yen Dragon Emperor City to the Dragon Prison domain. From high up in the sky, he could already see the incomparably majestic and familiar Dragon Prison City. Countless dragon warriors soared in the sky, breathing in and out the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, constantly growing. Everything was thriving. Just as the scorching sun rose, under the bright light of the firmament, every dragon warrior seemed to be glowing with a unique brilliance. They were about to leave. Kong Shinmu suddenly felt a little sad. He did not know how far away Donghuang Yonggu College was, but it would not be easy to go there and come back. I hope everything goes smoothly. Let's go see them first. Chapter 4108. Following the two flame dragon envoys, Kong Shinmu soon arrived at the dragon prison. Actually, Kong Shinmu was not very familiar with the dragon prison. He was only slightly familiar with Dragon Prison City. Soon, the three of them landed in Dragon Prison City. Seniors, would you like to come with me to the Shi clan residence? Kong Shinmu asked the two flame dragon envoys. The two flame dragon envoys were now completely covered in black cloaks that covered their faces. It was impossible to see what they looked like. However, Kong Shinmu knew that the two of them seemed to be ranked relatively high among the 12 flame dragon envoys. Let's go together. The two flame dragon envoys said indifferently and followed Kong Shinmu. We will follow the orders of the Yen Dragon Emperor. We will send you back and bid farewell to the others. At the same time, we will definitely protect your safety. After leaving the Yen Dragon Emperor's court, we can't always follow you. However, before that, we will not let anything happen to you. Although Kong Shinmu did not know what danger he would encounter in the dragon prison, since the other party had said so, it was better to let them follow him. Dragon King Qiu and Sacred Dragon Shi Tao are both on good terms with me. I shouldn't encounter any danger in the dragon prison. Kong Shinmu did not think too much about it. He immediately headed towards the Shi clan residence. Soon, he arrived at the Shi clan residence. Kong Shinmu had been to the Shi clan residence countless times. He had even cultivated and lived there for a long time. However, when he came to the Shi clan residence this time, the situation there seemed to be a little different from before. This was because the Shi clan's residence was actually very lively. This liveliness was a bit like there was some big shot here, causing countless people to discuss this. Even outside the Shi clan's residence, there were many dragon warriors watching, pointing towards the inside. When they saw Kong Shinmu appear, many people immediately lowered their heads and whispered to each other. Isn't that the so-called genius from a year ago, Kong Shinmu? He disappeared for a year and actually reappeared. This time, the Shi clan estate is in trouble. This time, Dragon King brought his son here to propose marriage, and the one he has taken a fancy to is the daughter of Holy Dragon Shi Tao, Shi Yueying. That's right. Quan Dragon King Zhao Wuwang. His son, Zhao Tianji, is rumored to have met the eldest miss of the Shi clan during his experiential learning. From then on, he continuously pursued her. Even after the genius Kong Shinmu disappeared for a year, even some of the elders of the Shi clan supported the marriage of Shi Yueying to that Zhao Tianji. Quan Dragon King? Hearing these discussions, Kong Shinmu finally knew what had happened in the Shi clan residence today. To be honest, he was a little surprised by this. He never thought that something like this would happen in the 1 year he was in the sacred tower of the fire dragon. However, his mood did not fluctuate too much. This was because he still did not know the exact situation. He would only be able to find out the exact situation after he stepped into the Shi clan estate. He took a step forward and headed towards the entrance of the Shi clan estate. Halt! This is the Holy Dragon residence. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. When the two guards saw Kong Shin-mu, they immediately snorted coldly. It was obvious that they wanted to stop Kong Shin-mu and the two Flame Dragon envoys from entering. This surprised Kong Shin-mu. Logically speaking, the guards of the Shi clan estate should know him, right? Although he had disappeared for a year, the guards shouldn't have forgotten about him, right? However, the words of the Flame Dragon envoy reached Kong Shin-mu's ears. These two people are not the guards of the Holy Dragon residence, but the guards of the Dragon King. They should have been brought here by the Dragon King. That's strange. This is the Shi clan estate. Why is the entrance guarded by the Dragon King's men? Kong Shin-mu frowned. If that was the case, it would be a little difficult for him to step into the Shi clan estate on his own. But now, the two people behind him were Flame Dragon envoys. Flame Dragon envoys, what kind of status did they have? They were the 12 most powerful and had the highest status in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's court, apart from the Dragon Emperor himself. Other than the Dragon Emperor, there was really no place in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's court that could stop them. Get out of the way! The hoarse voice sounded, but with just a raise of his hand, a terrifying force that could not be seen with the naked eye sent the two Dragon King guards guarding the entrance of the residence flying, and they fell heavily to the ground inside the residence. This domineering method made Kong Shin-mu swallow his saliva uncontrollably. Even though he knew that the Flame Dragon envoys had a high status and were extremely powerful, he did not expect them to solve the problem so directly. However, they probably did not want to reveal their identities as Flame Dragon envoys. Otherwise, as long as they revealed their identities, the other party would not dare to stop them. Seeing the two Dragon King guards being sent flying, the onlookers outside the Shi clan estate were all astonished. They were originally thinking, what kind of changes had happened to Kong Shin-mu when he returned after a year? It was said that this child was summoned by the Dragon Emperor. Since he had returned, his strength must have increased by quite a bit, right? Naturally, no matter how much the strength of the younger generation increased, it would be impossible for them to reach the level of many Dragon King experts. Therefore, they still wanted to watch a good show. They wanted to know what kind of conflict would occur between Kong Shin-mu and the Dragon King's forces. Logically speaking, they felt that Kong Shin-mu would definitely lose to the Dragon King. But from the looks of it, the two mysterious black-cloaked men behind Kong Shin-mu were extremely terrifying. With just a wave of their hands, they sent the two Dragon King guards flying. Who were these two people? Could it be that the current Kong Shin-mu had already reached an extremely high realm? This caused everyone to have doubts in their hearts. However, Kong Shin-mu did not care if they were doubtful or not. He watched as the two Dragon King guards were sent flying, but he did not care too much. Although he did not know the exact situation of the Dragon King, just by looking at the entrance of the Shi clan estate, the Dragon King was guarding it. It was obvious that the Dragon King had come in a menacing manner with ill intentions. Kong Shin-mu stepped inside. The two Flame Dragon envoys were like his bodyguards, following behind him. In fact, they were originally Kong Shin-mu's bodyguards. Moreover, in the eyes of the Dragon Emperor, their status was not comparable to that of Kong Shin-mu. After all, Kong Shin-mu was someone who would definitely become the Dragon Emperor in the future. When they stepped into the mansion, the hundreds of people in the Shi clan estate turned around at almost the same time and cast their gazes on them. Who are you? A dignified and domineering voice came from a middle-aged man in a high position in front of them. When he saw Kong Shin-mu step into the mansion, his expression was extremely unfriendly. Chapter 4109. Other than Dragon King Zhao Wuwang, there were a lot of people in the Shi clan's mansion. The people of the Shi clan's mansion were naturally among them. Furthermore, Kong Shin-mu immediately saw Holy Dragon Shi Tao, as well as his daughters, Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong. After not seeing them for a year, Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong had become even more beautiful. Their every movement carried a considerable amount of temptation. Their femininity was from the inside out, and they were no longer the young girls they used to be. However, Holy Dragon Shi Tao's situation didn't seem to be right. At this moment, he actually looked a little dispirited. His face was rather pale, as if he had been seriously injured. What's going on? Kong Shin-mu frowned slightly. He roughly understood that something was wrong. However, he still wanted to size up the others present. No matter what, He had to figure out the current situation first. Dragon King Zhao Wuwang was naturally the one with the most authority. At this moment, he was standing in the middle of the crowd. At the center of the crowd, there were many experts from the Quanlong domain that he had brought with him. All of them had tyrannical auras, and it was obvious that they were much stronger than the Shi clan's mansion. Among them, there were even 2 powerful dragon warriors with holy dragon-level inherited blood essence. They should be the holy dragon experts of the Quanlong domain. Other than the holy dragon Shi Tao, the other elders of the Shi clan's mansion were all heavenly dragon-level inherited blood essence. Compared to the power of the Dragon King, it was like heaven and earth. In reality, that should be the case. After all, the Shi clan residence was just a holy dragon residence under the prison dragon domain. On the other hand, the Quan Dragon King was a super powerful being who was in charge of a dragon domain like the prison dragon king. He had passed the 3rd level of the Holy Dragon Tower and was a powerful being who had risen from a holy dragon to a dragon king. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was huge. Jiang Shenwu knew that the dragon domain was a dragon domain beside the dragon prison domain. The dragon domain and the dragon prison domain should not have interfered with each other. For some reason, this Dragon King actually led people to Dragon Prison City? Also, where did Dragon King go? Kong Shinmu. Sacred Dragon Shi Tao and his 2 sisters and daughters stood in front of the main hall of the mansion. When they saw Kong Shinmu and the 2 mysterious black-cloaked men step into the mansion, they couldn't help but be stunned. They didn't expect to see Kong Shinmu reappear at this time. However, when they saw Kong Shinmu, they were not as surprised and delighted as Kong Shinmu had imagined. Instead, he looked a little flustered. This made Kong Shinmu feel a little touched. Clearly, Shi Tao and Shi Yueying were worried about him. They were afraid that Dragon King would view him as an enemy if he appeared now. After all, in their eyes, he did not have much power. Although he had disappeared for a year and had a relationship with Dragon Emperor Yen, it was impossible for him to surpass the Dragon King. Therefore, now that he had returned, they were afraid that Kong Shinmu would be targeted by this Dragon King. However, Kong Shinmu was not afraid. This was because he was now shouldering the mission that Dragon Emperor Yen had given him. The 2 flame dragon envoys behind him were also one of the 12 strongest people in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, apart from the Dragon Emperor Yen. So what if he was the Dragon King? Even if 10 Dragon Kings were here, they wouldn't be a match for the 2 flame dragon envoys today. Kong Shinmu, hurry up and leave. Sacred Dragon Shi Tao was the first to shout in a low voice. However, he quickly covered his mouth and started coughing violently. It seemed like he was not feeling well. Kong Shinmu saw this and naturally couldn't leave just like that. His expression turned cold. No matter what, he had to find out what was going on today. Senior Shi, what's going on today? He glanced at the people around him and asked calmly, "Also, what's wrong with your body?" As he spoke, he walked towards Shi Tao. Seeing this, Shi Tao was a little worried. Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong's faces were also filled with panic. Kong Shinmu, hurry up and leave. However, it was obvious that their words didn't have much effect on such an occasion. Father, this person should be Kong Shinmu. They called him out just now. A handsome young man with a dark look in his eyes stood next to the Dragon King and said softly to the Dragon King. Dragon King Zhao Wuwang's son, Zhao Tianji, was the young man who wanted to marry Shi Yueying. He was wearing luxurious clothes and had a dragon tooth on his waist. That was obviously a rather powerful dragon weapon. As for whether it was dragon grade or heaven grade, Kong Shinmu couldn't be sure. This is Kong Shinmu, the genius young man called away by the Yen Dragon Emperor? The Dragon King smiled faintly and glanced at Kong Shinmu and the 2 black-cloaked people behind him. He was a little confused about their identities, but he didn't pay too much attention to them. He knew that Kong Shinmu had been in the Holy Tower for almost a year without coming out. According to the joint petition of the other divine dragon experts, this kid should have been driven out of the Holy Tower by the Dragon Emperor. After all, no one wanted to see a kid in the 9th divine martial realm occupy a latrine without taking a shit. As the Dragon King naturally had a certain amount of connections in the Yen Dragon Emperor city, so he knew what was happening there. It was precisely because of this that he would directly follow his son's wishes and come to the Shi clan estate in the Dragon Prison realm to propose marriage for his son. Even if the other party was unwilling, with the influence of the Dragon King, he would definitely get what he wanted. There's no need to stop him. Let him come over. The Dragon King wasn't very sure what was going on with Kong Shinmu, so he couldn't go against him for the time being. He guessed that Kong Shinmu had been driven out of the holy tower of the fire dragon. But what if there was another possibility? The Dragon King wasn't that stupid. He waved his hand and asked the other people from the Quanlong Yu to make way. However, although the people from the Quanlong Yu made way, they still had disdainful smiles in their eyes. They obviously didn't think highly of Kong Shinmu. As for the two black-cloaked people behind Kong Shinmu, they were a little wary. After all, they seemed to be quite strong. Unfortunately, they couldn't see their faces. Seeing that they didn't stop him, Kong Shinmu passed through the courtyard of the mansion and went straight to the holy dragon Shi Tao. "Senior, what's wrong with you? Why is your face so pale?" Kong Shinmu hurried forward and supported the holy dragon Shi Tao as he asked with concern. Seeing that Kong Shinmu had already come over, it was impossible for him to leave even if he wanted to. The holy dragon Shi Tao couldn't help but sigh and said, "I was injured 7 days ago, and I haven't recovered yet. But you don't have to worry about me. Given the current situation, it's really... sigh." Chapter 41:10. Isn't the current situation pretty good? Dragon King Zhao Wuwang couldn't help but smile when he heard Sacred Dragon Shi Tao's sigh. He patted his son Zhao Tianji's shoulder and said, "Some things are easier to clarify when the parties involved are present. Shi Tao, am I right or wrong? Even if Kong Shinmu wasn't here, I wouldn't have married your son." Shi Yueying immediately withdrew her gentle gaze from Kong Shinmu and turned to Dragon King Quan. She said coldly, "Moreover, he's back now. If you still care about your reputation, you should take your son and leave this place now." "You can't say that." Dragon King Quan let out a calm smile. Now that the enslaved Dragon King is dead, the entire enslaved dragon domain is without a leader. It's obvious that a new Dragon King is needed. If you agree to this marriage, I, Dragon King, can even recommend you to Dragon Emperor Yen. Shi Tao, this is your only chance. You can step into the holy tower of the fiery dragon and obtain the essence of the Dragon King. Kong Shinmu was stunned when he heard this. Even the two fiery dragon envoys behind him were surprised. The Dragon King of the Dragon Prison. Dragon King Qiu was dead? This was a little unexpected. How did Senior Dragon King Qiu die? Kong Shinmu's expression changed as he asked Shi Tao. 7 days ago, when we were together. Shi Tao explained in detail. That day, a big demon invaded our dragon prison. Dragon King Qiu and I went to deal with it, but we fell into an ambush. Senior Dragon King Qiu was taken away and I was seriously injured. It was this Dragon King Quan who saved me. A big demon invaded? Kong Shinmu was stunned. He couldn't help but think of the heaven-opening demonic dragon. However, this probably wasn't the heaven-awakening devil dragon's doing. After all, the heaven-awakening devil dragon had always been rather peaceful. Most importantly, he definitely wouldn't risk coming to the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire to cause trouble. "Did you find Senior Dragon King's corpse?" Kong Shinmu asked again. "No, I only saw Lord Dragon King being taken away by them. I didn't see them kill him. However, being brought to the demon realm, Lord Dragon King will definitely be in danger." Shi Tao's face darkened. He seemed to recall the scene when the Dragon King was taken away by the other party. In other words, Dragon King Qiu hasn't been confirmed dead yet. Kong Shinmu's face turned solemn. If that was the case, he could find a chance to ask the heaven-awakening devil dragon. However, the two flame dragon ambassadors were following him. It was impossible for him to ask the heaven-awakening devil dragon. The most urgent thing was to solve the current situation. He raised his head and looked at Dragon King and his son Zhao Tianji again. He said with a solemn face, "Dragon King Quan, thank you for saving Senior Shi Tao from the hands of the big demon. However, since Shi Yueying doesn't want to marry your son, I'm afraid it's inappropriate for you to come here today. If you really want to thank my father, you should marry your daughter to me." Zhao Tianji sneered and stared at Kong Shinmu. "You are just at the 9th level of the divine martial realm. What qualifications do you have to criticize me? A brat like you, this young master can kill you in one move. If you know what's good for you, don't talk so much. I won't make things too difficult for you later. How can Shi Yueying be willing to marry someone like you?" Jiang Shenwu merely glanced at him before laughing with a disdainful expression. Even though you've reached the Nirvana Tribulation Realm, even with the addition of Nirvana energy, you're still inferior to me. If we're talking about strength, you should turn around and leave right now. Kong Shinmu could see that Zhao Tianji had inherited the blood essence of a heavenly dragon, and was now at the 4th level of the Nirvana Tribulation Realm. For Kong Shinmu, this guy was no match for him at all. Although he had the power of Nirvana, it was impossible for him to know any dragon martial technique. Compared with his opponent on the 5th floor of the Holy Tower, the Star Dragon, he was a little bit weaker. Needless to say, Kong Shinmu had been tempered by the divine dragon blood essence of the Holy Tower. The divine dragon blood essence in his body was already at the divine dragon level. If he fought with Zhao Tianji, it would be like bullying a child. But Zhao Tianji didn't know that. When he heard Kong Shinmu's words, he suddenly became furious. Who do you think should leave with his head in his hands? Could it be that you have been soaking in water for the past year that your brain has rotted? Calm down. Calm down. King Quanlong immediately stepped forward. He snorted coldly and said, "How did your father teach you normally? No matter what opponent you meet, there is no need to argue. Crush them with absolute strength is the way to go." That's right. Zhao Tianji glanced at Shi Yueying with absolute confidence in his eyes. Then he looked at Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu, do you dare to come out and fight with me? If you can win this fight, we will turn around and leave. But if this young master wins, Miss Yueying will naturally marry me. Ha ha ha. You think too much. Kong Shinmu shook his head. Shi Yueying will never marry you today. You'd better give up on this idea. But there is no harm in fighting with you. But I will not gamble with someone else's happiness. That would be irresponsible to her, and also to myself. How about this? If I lose, I will teach you a 2nd-grade dragon technique. How about it? In this 1 year, Kong Shinmu had not only cultivated and comprehended the dragon technique. He had already cultivated the 2nd-grade defensive dragon technique, the divine dragon shield, to the heaven level. This was the level that could be imparted to others. It was possible to copy the cultivation secret manual for other dragon warriors to practice this dragon martial skill. As soon as he said this, everyone in the surroundings was instantly shocked. Did he mean that Kong Shinmu had already cultivated a 2nd-grade dragon technique to the heaven level? How was that possible? How old was he? For others, even if it was a 4th or 5th-grade dragon martial skill, they would need at least 10 years to have a sliver of a chance to comprehend it to the heaven grade. But now, Jiang Xinwu had actually cultivated a 2nd-grade dragon martial skill to the heaven grade? Are you kidding me? Dragon King sneered. Do you think it's that easy to cultivate a 2nd-grade dragon technique to the heaven level? Don't pester me endlessly. If you lose, Shi Yueying will have to marry my son. It's decided. Your son will see if it's a 2nd-grade dragon technique that has been cultivated to the heaven level. Cut the crap and come forward. Kong Shinmu snorted coldly. He took a step forward and transformed into a dragon. A 300-jong long black dragon appeared in the sky above the Shi clan residence in an instant. This scene immediately caused everyone around to be dumbfounded. Chapter 41:11. Divine Dragon. Inherited Blood Essence. At this moment, everyone in the Shi clan estate looked as if they had swallowed an egg. Their mouths were wide open and their eyes were wide open. They didn't dare believe that the situation before their eyes was real. Kong Shinmu, a young man with an ordinary heavenly dragon blood essence a year ago, was now a divine dragon inherited blood essence? What on earth did this kid experience in the Holy Tower of the Flame Dragon in the past year? Quan Long Wang couldn't believe this was real. Dragon King Quan's son, Zhao Tianji, was also dumbfounded. He could not believe that Kong Shinmu had become a divine dragon inherited blood essence dragon martial artist. To their knowledge, the youngest divine dragon inherited blood essence dragon martial artist was at least 30 or 40 years old. How could there be such a young divine dragon inherited blood essence dragon martial artist? On the other hand, divine dragon Shi Tao, Shi Yueying, and Shi Yutong were all pleasantly surprised. To them, Kong Shinmu's reappearance was already very good, even though it was not the right time. But now, they had seen Kong Shinmu transform into a divine dragon martial artist. This made them realize that Kong Shinmu must have put in a lot of effort in the past year. Even if Dragon Emperor Yen had given him a chance, he must have put in a lot of effort to achieve such a breakthrough. Otherwise, Wouldn't the Fire Dragon Empire be filled with young dragon martial artists who had inherited the Holy Dragon's blood essence? What's wrong? Didn't you say you wanted to challenge me? Now let's fight. Kong Shinmu's loud voice echoed in the surroundings. Even all the dragon martial artists in Dragon Prison City could see this scene. A 300-meter-long pitch-black divine dragon soared into the sky from the Shi clan residence and challenged Zhao Tianji, the son of Dragon King Quan. This pitch-black divine dragon was beyond everyone's expectations. It was actually a young divine dragon martial artist who was only in the 9th tier of the divine martial realm. Zhao Tianji was shocked at first, but he quickly regained his composure. The blood essence of the divine dragon's inheritance is indeed powerful. I never expected you to have already reached the level of a divine dragon. Zhao Tianji snorted coldly. He raised his head and looked at Kong Shinmu in the sky. However, you are still at the 9th level of the divine martial arts stage, while I am at the 4th level of the Nirvana Tribulation stage. Zhao Tianji was in his 30s. It was indeed quite good for him to have such strength. Of course, compared to Zhang Zizai in the past, or even compared to Ji Yeshuan of the Ji tribe in the Dragon Prison domain, his talent was not too strong. However, his cultivation resources were abundant, and he had the guidance of the Dragon King's father, so his speed of improvement was naturally much faster than that of ordinary young dragon warriors. If you really want to compete with me, I, Zhao Tianji, will not disappoint you. Zhao Tianji snorted coldly. Then, his body turned into a blazing sun. His entire body suddenly exploded and flew up into the sky. Although his blazing sun divine dragon body was only 100 feet long, it looked 2/3 smaller than the black dragon Kong Shinmu had transformed into. However, the nirvana power lingering around his body, coupled with the decisive momentum of having passed the 4th nirvana tribulation, still made him look much more dazzling than Kong Shinmu in the sky. Although the level of the divine dragon's blood essence was very important, the cultivation realm was more important. When the cultivation realm was similar, the level of the divine dragon's blood essence would have an overwhelming advantage. But now, Kong Shinmu's cultivation realm was only at the 9th level of the divine martial arts stage. He had not even passed the 1st nirvana tribulation, nor had he obtained his own nirvana power from the nirvana tribulation. This made his battle strength inferior to Zhao Tianji's. But this was only the opinion of ordinary people. For Kong Shinmu, Zhao Tianji was not his ultimate opponent. He could even try to deal with someone at the 5th level of the Nirvana Tribulation stage. Of course, if it was someone at the 5th level of the Nirvana Tribulation stage, Kong Shinmu would be in more danger. It was very likely that he would be killed by the opponent. But to deal with a guy like Zhao Tianji, Kong Shinmu would not feel too much pressure at all. Of course, the opponent's strength was not weak. It was just that Kong Shinmu had transformed into the divine dragon's blood essence, and his strength was more than 3 times stronger than before. It just so happened that this was also the first battle after Kong Shinmu's divine dragon's blood essence was upgraded. For Jiang Shenwu, Zhao Tianji had come knocking on his door, which was also an opportunity. Come on, let's fight. Kong Shinmu laughed. He had 2 flame dragon envoys behind him, so he was not afraid of Dragon King suppressing him. Today, as long as he defeated Zhao Tianji, the son of Dragon King, the opponent would have no choice but to retreat. Of course, what to do next could wait. Anyway, before Kong Shinmu left for Donghuang Yonggu College, he had to settle this matter. The devouring power suddenly bloomed from his dragon body. Phantom Dragon Tooth. Kong Shinmu launched the first wave of attack with the Phantom Dragon Tooth, which was a 3rd-grade dragon martial technique. This wave of attack was to test the opponent's strength, but at the same time, it was also to cover up his real killing move. This is a 3rd-grade dragon martial technique. It's a 3rd-grade dragon martial technique. Impressive. Zhao Tianji laughed heartily. He was extremely confident in his own strength. In the previous battle against the Northern Chill Dragon Country, he had also obtained many meritorious deeds. Therefore, he was indeed much stronger than ordinary dragon martial artists of the same age. Now, I'll show you the power of my green lamp. The power of the green lamp was the power of nirvana that Zhao Tianji had cultivated. Nirvana energy was the nirvana energy obtained from overcoming the nirvana tribulation. This nirvana energy grew and multiplied endlessly within the body, and it was an energy that would never be exhausted. Thus, it was called nirvana energy. Every dragon martial artist's power of nirvana was different. However, there was a certain connection between the power of Nirvana and the talent of the dragon martial artist. When the dragon martial artist reached the Nirvana tribulation realm, the power of Nirvana would basically replace the talent. This was the case with Zhao Tianji. With a roar, the whole burning sun divine dragon suddenly burst out with a bright light. The power of the green lamp burst out from his body. It was like a small sun, burning with terrible heat. At that moment, the temperature suddenly exploded near Kong Xin Mu. The technique that Zhao Tianji used was also a grade 3 dragon martial skill, Ardent Sun Explosion. Its power was extraordinary. Moreover, he had already cultivated it to the dragon level. Coupled with the Nirvana energy, it produced a terrifying effect that surpassed the Shadow Dragon Fang transformation. Chapter 41:12. Scorching Sun Explosion. When this resplendent dragon martial skill exploded in the air, it immediately caused everyone in the Shi clan estate to become a little nervous. Who exactly was stronger, Jiang Xinwu, who had inherited the essence blood of the holy dragon, or Zhao Tianji, who was at the 5th level of the Nirvana tribulation stage? The answer was soon revealed. The countless shadow dragon teeth unleashed by Jiang Xinwu were actually shattered into pieces by the power of the scorching sun spatial explosion. They were completely unable to harm Zhao Tianji. However, the remaining power of Zhao Tianji's scorching sun spatial explosion that landed on Jiang Xinwu's body after shattering the shadow dragon teeth was also unable to harm Jiang Xinwu in the slightest. Zhao Tianji should have won by a little, right? Yes, but it is said that Kong Xinmu has cultivated a very strong body-refining dragon martial skill. He is stronger than Zhao Tianji in terms of physical defense. What's the use of only defense? Kong Xinmu does not even have the power of Nirvana. He must be dreaming if he wants to defeat Zhao Tianji. Everyone burst out laughing. Except for the extremely nervous Shi Tao family and the 2 Calm Yen dragon envoys, no one else was optimistic about Kong Xinmu's chances. After all, they were all too clear about the power of Nirvana. Having the power of Nirvana was twice as powerful as having the power of talent. It was impossible for Zhao Tianji to lose to Kong Xinmu in a fight. Unless there was a huge difference in the level of the skills used by the two sides. I heard that Kong Xinmu made a great contribution a year ago and obtained a first-grade dragon martial skill from the Yen Dragon Army. I wonder how his cultivation is going now. That first-grade dragon martial skill seems to be offensive. It should be powerful, but I have never seen the power of a first-grade dragon martial skill. I don't know how it is. He should still not be a match for Zhao Tianji. After all, Zhao Tianji also knows a second-grade dragon martial skill, and he must have almost mastered it. While everyone was talking, the confrontation between Kong Xinmu and Zhao Tianji finally entered the second round. Scorching Sun Explosion. Shining Roar. After Zhao Tianji finished using the third-grade dragon martial technique, he immediately followed up with a new third-grade dragon martial technique. The power of the green lamp that had previously exploded next to Jiang Xinwu flickered with a dazzling light, and issued an extremely ear-piercing sound. The appearance of the light and sound immediately made some low-level dragon martial artists close their eyes and cover their ears. The destructive power of the Scorching Sun Explosion and Shining Roar dragon martial skill was really amazing, but it was limited to the destruction of living beings. It had no destructive power to some natural objects. At that moment, Jiang Xinwu also endured the terrifying, dazzling light and ear-piercing sound. However, he did not hesitate and instantly enveloped his divine dragon's eyes and ears with his devouring power, covering the two powerful attacks in an instant. Blood flowed out of Jiang Xinwu's divine dragon eyes and ears. However, as the devouring power devoured the power of the green lamp of the blazing sun, even though it was only a little, it was enough for him to heal his injuries. I didn't expect such a dragon martial skill to exist. What a surprise! Kong Xinmu's black dragon body suddenly became violent. His body was 3 times bigger than Zhao Tianji's scorching sun divine dragon. At this moment, his black dragon body went berserk and suddenly fell on top of Zhao Tianji's scorching sun divine dragon. Extreme Shadow Flowing Light. Kong Xinmu used the second-grade dragon martial skill and instantly fell on top of scorching sun divine dragon. Then, his black dragon body, which was larger than its body size, instantly wrapped around it. But Zhao Tianji was not surprised. Seeing this situation, he sneered, "I heard that you have comprehended the power of devouring and are good at close combat. You can devour your opponent's power to strengthen yourself. Unfortunately, you really can't devour the power essence in my body today. Then, a layer of golden light appeared on his body. It turned out that he had used the dragon-level dragon weapon. It emitted a bright light that enveloped the scorching sun divine dragon's body. Zhao Tianji obviously had not integrated with the dragon-level dragon weapon. However, as a fourth-tier Nirvana Tribulation cultivator, he could obviously exert the power of the dragon-level dragon weapon. Even without integration, it was much stronger than the Heavenly Saint's halberd. The power of devouring spread in darkness. But on the surface of the scorching sun divine dragon's body, it could not penetrate the layer of dazzling golden light and corrode the scorching sun divine dragon's body to devour the opponent's power. This made Kong Xinmu a little disappointed. Zhao Tianji was really a bit like a turtle. It seemed that ordinary means could not penetrate his defense. How is it? Do you feel that your strength is insufficient? The gap in cultivation level cannot be made up for. Zhao Tianji immediately shouted. The power of the scorching sun divine dragon burned all over his body. There was actually a layer of golden flame that burned along with Kong Xinmu's black dragon body. Second-grade dragon martial skill, ancient fire of 10,000 splitting. The appearance of this layer of golden flame immediately made the surrounding people exclaim. Second-grade dragon martial skill, ancient fire of 10,000 splitting. This was the powerful dragon martial skill that Zhao Tianji had exchanged for in the battle with the northern Chill Dragon country. Currently, he had comprehended and cultivated this dragon martial skill to the earth level. In this 1 year, to be able to cultivate a grade 2 dragon martial skill from beginner to the earth level was already a pretty good result for a young man. Moreover, in general, only the Dragon King was qualified to cultivate a second-grade dragon martial skill. Even for the Dragon King, there were not many who had cultivated a first-grade dragon martial skill. Of course, even if they had cultivated a first-grade dragon martial skill, it would be difficult for them to thoroughly comprehend it to the heaven level and pass it on to the next generation. Therefore, for the younger generation, a second-grade dragon martial skill was basically the limit. Only the children of the Dragon King could have the opportunity to cultivate a second-grade dragon martial skill. For example, the holy dragon Shi Tao had cultivated a second-grade dragon martial skill, but he would have to wait a long time before he could cultivate it to the heaven level and pass it on to the next generation. Simply put, in the Shi clan's mansion, the strongest inheritance was a third-grade dragon martial skill. For example, the shadow dragon Fang that Kong Xinmu cultivated was passed on to him by Shi Tao. But in the Dragon King's mansion, there might be a second-grade dragon martial skill. On top of that, Zhao Tianji was also quite capable. In the war against the northern Chill Dragon country, he killed his enemies quickly. Even though he had to use other people's merits in order to obtain a second-grade dragon technique, it was still a success for him. Ancient fire of 10,000 splitting. Chapter 41:13. This second-grade dragon martial technique is quite destructive. Kong Xinmu found it interesting. The ancient fire of 10,000 split burned on his body, making him feel as though his entire body was about to be torn apart. The flames took the opportunity to enter, wanting to burn his 5 viscera and 6 bowels, and even his entire dragon body to ashes. Unfortunately, Kong Xinmu had inherited the blood essence of a divine dragon. The ancient fire burned into his blood vessels and was quickly swallowed by the devouring power in his blood vessels, turning it into the purest spiritual chi of heaven and earth to heal his injuries. His opponent's nirvana power was not weak, but it was not of a high level, which disappointed Kong Xinmu. Martial Dragon Shield. Jiang Xinwu's entire body was covered in a layer of divine dragon shield formed from devouring power. In the next moment, he suddenly extended it and directly excluded the ancient fire of 10,000 crack. Originally, Kong Xinmu was too lazy to pay attention to it, but he wanted to show his opponent that he had truly cultivated the second-grade dragon martial technique to its peak. Just now, his opponent did not believe that he could teach him a second-grade dragon martial technique. But now, he snorted and shouted, "Open your eyes and look. This is a second-grade dragon martial technique that has been cultivated to the heaven level. With the martial dragon divine shield here, Zhao Tianji, can your ancient fire hurt me?" His roar made Zhao Tianji's entire body tremble. A second-grade dragon martial technique had been cultivated to the heaven level. This martial dragon shield had actually reached the heaven level, so much so that his ancient fire could not even find a crack. Even the ancient fire that had corroded Kong Shinmu's body seemed to have disappeared without a trace, as if it had turned into air. It really is a second-grade dragon martial technique that has been cultivated to the extreme. Martial Dragon Shield. Is this what he exchanged for in the war with the Northern Chill Dragon country? This power is really terrifying. Even without the Nirvana power, he can use the Divine Dragon's blood essence to forcibly resist the powerful attack of Zhao Tianji, who is at the 4th level of the Nirvana Tribulation state. The crowd below, who originally didn't think highly of Kong Shinmu, had no choice but to admit that Kong Shinmu's talent was terrifying. The Martial Dragon Divine Shield had already reached the heaven level. Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong were pleasantly surprised. They weren't sure if Kong Shinmu had really done it, but it seemed like it was nothing to Kong Shinmu. A second-grade dragon martial technique had reached the heaven level. Zhao Tianji would not be a match for Kong Shinmu with just this dragon martial god shield. Shi Yueying knew that Kong Shinmu had long cultivated the body-tempering dragon-type martial technique. With the help of the martial dragon divine shield, it looked more like a 10,000-year-old tortoise. Although this analogy wasn't very good, it was very vivid. Basically, when the martial dragon shield was activated, unless it was an existence that was much stronger than Kong Shinmu, it was impossible to break through his defense. Humph, you are too naive. You want me to admit defeat? You are too inexperienced. Zhao Tianji didn't take Kong Shinmu seriously at all. Instead, he took a fancy to Kong Shinmu's martial dragon divine shield. As long as he defeated Kong Shinmu would have to teach him this dragon martial technique. This was what they had agreed on before. Originally, he didn't believe that Kong Shinmu could teach him a second-grade dragon martial technique. But now that Kong Shinmu had demonstrated it, he was a little happy. It seemed that he had gained a lot this time. It should be known that he had spent a lot of effort to obtain the ancient fire of 10,000 splitting. Moreover, he wouldn't have such a good opportunity to earn merit points in the war against the Northern Chill Dragon state. If he could get the martial dragon divine shield, he would be able to attack and defend. Wouldn't that be great? Ancient fire of 10,000 splitting, explode! Then he snorted coldly. The scorching sun divine dragon suddenly moved in the air. A bright light burst into flames and immediately covered the surface of Kong Shinmu's black dragon body. The ancient fire of 10,000 splitting spread from the body of the scorching sun divine dragon and enveloped the entire body of the black dragon in an instant. Then, the ancient fire of 10,000 splitting exploded. It turned out that the ancient fire of 10,000 splitting had two forms. The first form was to continuously burn the opponent in the form of possession. It would corrode the opponent's blood vessels and gradually burn the opponent to ashes. This form was relatively weak, but it was enough to deal with weaker opponents. Apart from that, there was another form, and that was the ancient fire explosion. At this moment, Zhao Tianji used the form of the ancient fire explosion. After the ancient fire of 10,000 splitting stuck to the body of Kong Shinmu's black dragon body, it exploded in an instant. The terrifying power of the green lamp and the power of Nirvana surged out from the explosion. It immediately caused many deep wounds on the body of Kong Shinmu's black dragon body. Then, the ancient fire of 10,000 splitting attached to the wounds and started burning them. It was as if a thin man had beaten up a fat man until he exploded. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu was not an ordinary fat man. His divine dragon's blood essence had allowed his black dragon body to grow to 300 feet long. At the same time, the devouring power in his body had also become 3 times stronger. The defense of the chaotic dragon body of the body-refining dragon had also increased by 3 times. The next moment, before Zhao Tianji, Dragon King, and the others could laugh with joy, the power in Kong Shinmu's body suddenly exploded. Now, there's no need to keep you alive. Void Dragon's Sky-Raising Blast. This dragon attack was an extremely powerful trump card for the current Kong Shinmu. He did not even want to use this move, but the destructive power of his opponent's ancient fire of 10,000 splitting was not small. Kong Shinmu could not be bothered to tangle with his opponent any longer. It was more decisive to end the battle quickly. The silhouettes of 3 divine dragons appeared in the air. The 3 explosions of the Void Dragon's Sky-Raising Blast, a total of 24 pitch-black divine dragon-light cannons suddenly bombarded Zhao Tianji's location. As far as the eye could see, there were pure pitch-black divine dragon-light cannons all around. 24 beams of light rapidly approached and completely enveloped Zhao Tianji. What? Zhao Tianji did not even have time to react before he was drowned in this terrifying explosion. Tianji. Dragon King Zhao Wuwang's expression changed drastically when he sensed the terror of this dragon attack. He instantly transformed into his true form as the Dragon King, and a terrifying aura immediately spread out from the Shi clan residence. Zhao Wuwang realized that his son was likely to die to this move from Kong Shinmu, so he attacked without hesitation. A terrifying divine dragon power that far surpassed the power of Nirvana landed in front of the 24 pitch-black divine dragon-light cannons and completely blocked them. Even though the origin dragon attack was on the verge of reaching the heaven rank, Zhao Wuwang's power did not waver. Then, Zhao Wuwang looked at Kong Shinmu with a cold look in his eyes. Chapter 41:14. Zhao Wuwang actually wanted to make a move against Kong Shinmu. One had to know that Zhao Wuwang was the Dragon King, the Lord of the Dragon Territory. His strength had long surpassed the Nirvana Tribulation Realm and reached the Reincarnation Tribulation Realm. Although he had not reached the peak of the Reincarnation Tribulation Realm, his strength definitely surpassed Kong Shinmu's by countless levels. Even if Kong Shinmu self-destructed in front of him, he would not be able to cause the slightest bit of harm. On the other hand, if he wanted to deal with Kong Shinmu, he would only need to lift a finger. Whether it was in terms of cultivation realm or the grade of the divine dragon's blood essence, Zhao Wuwang crushed Kong Shinmu. Of course, this was also the case now. After a period of time, when Kong Shinmu returned from Donghuang Yonggu College, he might not be any weaker than Zhao Wuwang. However, if Zhao Wuwang wanted to make a move against Kong Shinmu now, Kong Shinmu would not be able to resist at all. However, Kong Shinmu was not worried about this at all. Old man, you actually don't care about your reputation and want to make a move against me? Kong Shinmu sneered as he soared in the sky, not the slightest bit afraid of Zhao Wuwang's actions. Humph, since you tried to kill my son today, I, the Dragon King, will naturally teach you a lesson. Also, hand over that second-grade defensive dragon martial technique of yours. Otherwise, don't even think of leaving this place alive today. Zhao Wuwang had transformed into a 500 Zhong Dragon King's body. His power was terrifying, and even the sacred dragon Shi Tao below could not be a match for him at his peak. At this moment, he was threatening Kong Shinmu, and a terrifying power spread towards Kong Shinmu in the sky. Kong Shinmu! Shi Yueying, Shi Tao, and the others jumped in fright. They really didn't expect that Zhao Wuwang would really fight in a spar between the younger generation. Just a moment ago, Shi Yueying felt that Kong Shinmu was going to defeat Zhao Tianji. She didn't expect that Zhao Wuwang would be so shameless as to bully Kong Shinmu and force Kong Shinmu to write down the cultivation technique of the martial dragon god shield. Moreover, this Zhao Wuwang seemed to want to capture Kong Shinmu and use force to coerce him. At that time, if Kong Shinmu was unwilling, his life might be in danger. Divine Martial! Shi Tao was injured, and his heart was burning with anxiety as he watched Zhao Wuwang make his move. If he was at his peak condition, he could try to protect Kong Shinmu. At the very least, he could block Zhao Wuwang for a while, allowing Kong Shinmu to escape. But now, as for the others in the Shi clan, they didn't have a single sacred dragon, so they couldn't stop Zhao Wuwang for even a moment. Even if they had the ability to protect Kong Shinmu and allow Kong Shinmu to escape, they wouldn't be willing to do so. At that moment, when they saw that Zhao Wuwang was about to attack, the many elders from the Shi clan mansion started laughing instead. A mere junior dares to strut around in front of Dragon King? How naive. That's right. Does he really think that young Master Zhao Tianji is that easy to bully? Does he really think that defeating young Master will change the situation? How foolish. He's only throwing his life away by barging into the Shi clan's residence. He even gave Dragon King a second-grade dragon martial technique. How satisfying. The elders of the Shi clan were actually laughing and chatting with an outsider. This situation was truly chilling. This was especially true for Holy Dragon Shi Tao, as well as the two sisters, Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong. They hated the words of those elders to death, but they were powerless to change anything. Those elders were simply people who forsook morality at the sight of profit and fawned on those in power. If it wasn't for this incident, they really wouldn't have been able to tell that these elders were actually such people. However, the situation was extremely urgent now. Even if Shi Tao had to put his life on the line, he couldn't let Kong Shinmu fall into Dragon King's hands. Even though he was coughing and holding his chest, he still took a step forward. He immediately wanted to transform into a dragon and stop Dragon King. However, at this moment, an arm draped in a pitch-black cloak appeared in front of him and blocked his path. A hoarse voice resounded, "Don't worry, Sacred Dragon." Shi Tao immediately recalled that Kong Shinmu seemed to have brought two black-cloaked figures to the Shi clan estate. However, he didn't know who they were, so he didn't place his hopes on them. Moreover, even if Kong Shinmu had brought two helpers, how could they be a match for Dragon King? If Dragon King Chiu was still here, Dragon King wouldn't have been so arrogant. However, Dragon King Chiu had died at the hands of that greater demon, so Dragon King had become even more unbridled. "May I ask who the two of you are?" Shi Tao coughed. He was just about to ask when he suddenly sensed a terrifying and shocking aura erupt from ahead. A violet divine lightning dragon that was over 600 m long suddenly appeared here, and it obstructed Zhao Wuwang's path. After that, the violent energy of violet lightning rumbled as it descended, and it instantly smashed against Zhao Wuwang's body. It was as if a sudden clap of thunder had descended from the sky. Then the crowd saw that the mighty Dragon King Zhao Wuwang had actually fallen from the sky and landed on the ground with a loud crash. "What's this?" Regardless of whether it was inside or outside the Shi clan mansion, all the spectating dragon warriors in the entire dragon prison city were shocked speechless by this instant. The dragon practitioners that Dragon King had brought with him had been relying on Dragon King to show off their strength. However, all of them were staring with their eyes wide open in shock. They hadn't expected that their greatest backer, Dragon King Zhao Wuwang, would be struck down by a single move and heavily injured to the ground. Just who was this violet divine lightning dragon that was over 600 m long? Everyone turned around and looked around. They discovered that one of the black-cloaked men that Kong Shinmu had brought with him had transformed into a violet divine lightning dragon that was over 600 m long, and had heavily injured Dragon King Zhao Wuwang with a single move. "How dare you? Who dares to behave atrociously in my Dragon Emperor Zhao Wuwang?" Immediately, a divine dragon expert from Quanlong Yu shouted, "This is Dragon King Quanlong Yu of my Dragon Emperor Zhao Wuwang. Dragon King Quan, how dare you attack Lord Dragon King? You should know what's good for you and come down immediately and wait for the envoy from Dragon Emperor City to deal with you. Otherwise, it will be considered a provocation to our Dragon Emperor Zhao Wuwang. You will die without a doubt." He clearly didn't know the identity of the Violet Divine Lightning Dragon, but he guessed that the Violet Divine Lightning Dragon had come from another country of the Yen Dragon Emperor Zhao Wuwang. Chapter 41:15. Originally, the two Flame Dragon envoys did not want to reveal their identities. But helplessly, the matter of the Shi clan residence was a little too big, and it even involved Quanlong Yu's Dragon King, Zhao Wuwang. Therefore, if they did not reveal their identities, it would definitely be difficult to convince the masses. Moreover, it would be detrimental to Kong Shinmu's reputation, as well as the future situation of the Shi clan residents. Therefore, they definitely had to reveal their identities. After defeating Dragon King in one strike, the purple lightning divine dragon transformed into a human form, once again becoming the appearance of the black-cloaked person, and took out a fiery red flaming token from his bosom. "Look clearly, what is this?" The voice of the black-cloaked person was rather crisp, and sounded like a woman. All this while, Jiang Xinwu had never heard this woman speak. It was always another middle-aged man with a hoarse voice who spoke. At this moment, when he heard this voice, he felt that it was very pleasant to hear, like a lark standing on a branch in the early morning, sweet and melodious. Mainly, the age was very crisp, and it sounded very young. When everyone heard this, they immediately looked towards the flaming token in her hand. Flame Dragon. Flame Dragon Envoy? Ah, it's actually Lord Flame Dragon Envoy. How is this possible? Why would Lord Flame Dragon Envoy appear in Dragon Prison City? The two Lord Flame Dragon envoys came with Kong Shinmu. Could it be that this Kong Shinmu's identity is actually so noble? Everyone couldn't help but be dumbfounded. No one could have imagined it. Holy Dragon Shi Tao, as well as the two sisters Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong, all had their mouths wide open, looking a little incredulous. Originally, Shi Tao had planned to risk his life to save Kong Shinmu, but he didn't expect that the situation would actually take a turn for the better. Kong Shinmu actually brought the two Lord Flame Dragon envoys here. Obviously, Kong Shinmu's current status was extraordinary, and in the previous year in the Yen Dragon Emperor's court, He must have obtained some extraordinary achievements, which was why he was like this. Now, the Flame Dragon envoys naturally stood on Kong Shinmu's side. Moreover, they had seen how arrogant and domineering Dragon King was, spoiling and pampering his son Zhao Tianji. Obviously, they would have a lot of opinions towards Quan Dragon King. From the fact that this Lord Flame Dragon envoy had attacked and directly injured Quan Dragon King Zhao Wuwang, it could be seen that they did not have a good impression towards Quan Dragon King. With regards to Zhao Wuwang's attack, Kong Shinmu was also a little surprised. But now the Dragon envoys. Kong Shinmu and Envoy. Since they were willing to reveal their identities, it meant that they were willing to help Jiang Shenwu solve the problem that the Shi clan was facing. Therefore, Jiang Shenwu returned to his human form and quickly appeared in front of Shi Tao. Kong Shinmu, what's going on? Shi Tao looked at the black-cloaked man in the sky and the black-cloaked man in front of him. These two should be one of the 12 Flame Dragon envoys. In the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's court, they were second only to Yen Dragon Emperor. Not only their status, but more importantly, their strength. They were existences that could crush other ordinary Dragon Kings. For example, Dragon King Quan was seriously injured by the Flame Dragon envoy in one move. Shi Tao was now full of doubts. Kong Shinmu smiled and said softly, "I've made you worry. These two are Lord Flame Dragon envoys. They escorted me all the way from the Yen Dragon Emperor's court back here. They are mainly here to bid farewell to you." Farewell? Hearing Kong Shinmu's words, Shi Tao was even more puzzled. However, he seemed to have understood the meaning behind Kong Shinmu's words. Kong Shinmu's return this time was only to bid farewell, and he was probably going somewhere else. In other words, encountering Dragon King Quan acting atrociously in the Shi clan mansion was a complete coincidence. In this way, if they were to encounter such a thing again in the future, it would be very difficult for their Shi clan mansion. But no matter what, Shi Tao only hoped that this matter would not implicate Kong Shinmu. Speaking of farewell, are you going somewhere? Shi Yueying was pleasantly surprised, but when he heard Kong Shinmu say goodbye, his heart darkened. I have to go to a relatively distant place to cultivate. Dragon Emperor Yen said that I have to go there in order to have a better cultivation development. Kong Shinmu nodded his head and rejoiced. Fortunately, the two Lord Flame Dragon envoys came back with me. Otherwise, Dragon King Quan would have succeeded today. Thank you, Lord Flame Dragon envoy, for helping us out. Shi Tao's etiquette was still very good. Even though he was heavily injured, he still bowed to the black-cloaked man in front of him. Because of this, he even coughed twice, but very quickly. He was lifted up by the Flame Dragon envoy. No need to be so polite. Kong Shinmu's matter is our matter, the hoarse voice said indifferently. He was quite satisfied with Shi Tao. From the beginning, Shi Tao was the one who discovered Kong Shinmu. He was very clear about that, so he was also very clear about what the Shi clan mansion represented to Kong Shinmu. The Yen Dragon envoy was currently considering how he could help with the matter of the Shi clan residents. They had not heard of the matter of the Dragon King dying in the hands of the great demon 7 days ago. After all, there were so many dragon regions in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. The death of the Dragon King was not handled by the two of them, so they did not know about this news. Kong Shinmu's matter is Lord Flame Dragon envoy's matter. Little did he know that when he said this, it immediately made the surrounding people feel as though they had fallen into hell. Their bodies turned gloomy and cold. Other than Shi Tao, Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong, the rest of them were on the side of Dragon King Quan just now. Now the identity of the Flame Dragon envoy was revealed, and he even said that he valued Kong Shinmu so much. Didn't this mean that the rest of them would be in big trouble this time? Lord Flame Dragon envoy, please spare our lives. We were forced by this Dragon King Quan previously and had no choice but to listen to him. Otherwise, he would say that he would kill our entire family. One of the Shi clan mansion's elders immediately panicked and begged the Flame Dragon envoy in front of Shi Tao. He was afraid that the Flame Dragon envoy would throw them all into the abyss in a rage. After all, to the Flame Dragon envoy, even the Dragon King Quan was a small fry. Why would he care about ordinary sacred dragon mansion elders like them? If the Flame Dragon envoy really valued Kong Shinmu so much, just one word from Kong Shinmu and they would definitely be beheaded without any chance of survival. Therefore, someone saw the opportunity and immediately bowed down and began to beg. It had to be said that people really changed very quickly. Chapter 41:16. Naturally, the Flame Dragon Envoy did not believe the words of the Shi clan elders. It was only because of their identity as Flame Dragon Envoys that they were so subdued. Otherwise, Shi Yueying would have been forced to marry the Dragon King today. This was not a situation that the Flame Dragon Envoys wanted to see. After all, according to the rumors, Kong Xinmu and Shi Yueying had an ambiguous relationship. If Shi Yueying was really forced to be persecuted, Kong Xinmu would definitely be unhappy. Now, Kong Xinmu was a genius that the Dragon Emperor had taken a fancy to and wanted to send to Donghuang Yonggu College. It could be said that he would definitely become a powerhouse on the level of the Dragon Emperor in the future. Under such circumstances, it was not a wise choice to offend Kong Xinmu. In fact, the Flame Dragon Envoy was now thinking about how to stabilize Shi Yueying and the Shi clan residents so that he could tie Kong Xinmu to the Yen Dragon Emperor's court. As a powerhouse second only to the Yen Dragon Emperor in the Yen Dragon Emperor's court, the Flame Dragon Envoy was naturally qualified to know about Donghuang Yonggu College. Soon, the black-cloaked Flame Dragon Envoy in front of the Holy Dragon Shi Tao said in a hoarse voice, "Shi Yueying, are you willing to become my disciple? I am Dragon King Ming, one of the 12 Flame Dragon Envoys. If you are willing to take me as your master, I will do my best to nurture you." This was the method that the Flame Dragon Envoy, Dragon King Ming, thought of to help Kong Xinmu. To him, there was not much he could do, but if he wanted to protect the Shi clan residents, it was mainly Shi Tao and his 2 daughters. Therefore, Dragon King Ming decided to take Shi Yueying as his disciple first. This way, he could protect Shi Yueying. At the very least, people like the Dragon King would definitely not dare to have any ideas about Shi Yueying. Shi Yueying was also shocked by the identity of the black-cloaked man brought by Kong Xinmu. It turned out to be the Flame Dragon Envoy. When she heard the words of the black-cloaked man, her heart started beating faster. Not to mention the Flame Dragon Envoy, even if it was an ordinary Dragon King realm expert, wanting to take in a disciple would be a big deal. Shi Yueying never thought she would have such an opportunity. Furthermore, the opponent was one of the 12 Flame Dragon Envoys, Dragon King. It was said that Dragon King Ming was the strongest among the 12 Yen Dragon Envoys. If she could become his disciple, wouldn't that mean that her master would be the one whose strength was second only to Yen Dragon Emperors? This was simply unbelievable to Shi Yueying. Therefore, for a moment, she wondered if she was dreaming and didn't know if she should agree. At this time, Kong Xinmu landed and stopped in front of Shi Yueying. He smiled and said to her, "Shi Yueying, rest assured. Since Lord Dragon King Ming wants to take you as his disciple, you just have to agree. In the future, follow Lord Dragon King Ming and cultivate well." Okay. When Shi Yueying heard Kong Xinmu's words, she finally reacted and quickly bowed to Dragon King Ming. Disciple Shi Yueying greets master. No need to be so polite. From today onwards, you will follow me to the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. Dragon King Ming smiled and waved his hand. He didn't put on any airs in front of Shi Yueying. After all, he was very clear that if Shi Yueying could really become a couple with Kong Xinmu in the future, then as the master of Kong Xinmu's wife, his status would be quite honorable. The other Flame Dragon Envoy, the woman with the clear voice, had also returned to her human form. She also threw the dispirited and listless Zhao Wuwang and Zhao Tianji over. "I am Dragon King K, one of the 12 Yen Dragon Envoys. Shi Yutong, become my disciple. I will do my best to train you. Your talent is not inferior to your sister's. Your future achievements will definitely not be low." The Magpie Dragon King's voice was crisp and clear. She didn't reveal her face, but just her voice alone was enough to make one imagine a delicate and beautiful face. This disciple Shi Yutong greets master. Shi Yutong was more quick-witted than Shi Yueying. After all, she had a lively personality. When such an opportunity came, she didn't need anyone to say anything. She grabbed it and immediately bowed to Dragon King K as a disciple. Seeing that the 2 Yen Dragon Envoys actually valued Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong so much and fought to take them as disciples, the surrounding people almost couldn't believe it. Was this still the senior Yen Dragon Envoy who was usually so high and mighty? Why did he look so easy to talk to? Could it be that all this was because of Kong Xinmu? They didn't know why. Of course, they didn't know that Kong Shinmu was about to leave the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire and go to the Donghuang Yonggu College, which had hundreds of Dragon Emperor empires in the east. Once he returned from Donghuang Yonggu College, although it would be at least a few years later, Kong Shinmu's cultivation realm would definitely be the best in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor Empire. And Shi Tao, as a holy dragon, you fought against a great demon not long ago. Since the Dragon King is already dead, you should prepare and try to see if you can improve in the Yen Dragon's sacred tower and become the Dragon King's inheritance blood essence. If you succeed, the Dragon Prison Domain should be renamed. Everything will be up to you. Dragon King continued to speak. These words were directed at Shi Tao. Just like that, the two Yen Dragon envoys had already solved all the problems that the Shi clan residence was currently facing. The reason why the Dragon King dared to behave atrociously in the Shi clan residence was entirely because the Dragon King had died, and Shi Tao was only an ordinary holy dragon expert. But now, Shi Tao's daughters had become the disciples of the Yen Dragon envoy. He himself had also obtained the opportunity to become the Dragon King and have the opportunity to rename the Dragon Prison City and the Dragon Prison Domain. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about this opportunity before. He had even thought that if he became the Dragon King, the Dragon Domain and Dragon City under his management would be called Rain Dragon. Rain Dragon Domain and Rain Dragon City. This was the name he had thought of a long time ago. The reason why he used this name was naturally because his two most cherished daughters had the word rain in their names. Thank you, Yen Dragon envoys. Cough cough. Holy Dragon Shi Tao was so excited that he couldn't help but cough again. Seeing this, the Dragon King's clear voice sounded out once again. This is a healing pill personally refined by the Dragon Emperor Yen. Take it first, it should be able to help your injuries improve a little. After saying that, he threw a pill bottle over and caught it for Shi Tao to catch. Shi Tao caught the pill bottle and couldn't help but feel a little surprised. At the same time, he didn't know whether he should accept it or not. This pill was personally refined by the Dragon Emperor Yen. One could imagine how strong its healing effects were and how valuable it was. If he accepted it, Uncle Shi, just accept it. Kong Shinmu advised with a smile. If his injuries weren't healed, it would be almost impossible to pass through the first 3 levels of the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower. Chapter 41:17. Kong Shinmu was about to head to Donghuang Yonggu College. No matter what his future achievements were, he would never forget Holy Dragon Shi Tao, who had sheltered him back then. No matter what, Holy Dragon Shi Tao had helped Kong Shinmu a lot and was a good friend of his father, Jiang Zizai. Logically speaking, Kong Shinmu should repay him for protecting him. Therefore, today was the day Kong Shinmu repaid them. Jiang Shinwu didn't elaborate on the specifics, but Shi Tao could tell from the look in Jiang Shinwu's eyes. Good, I didn't expect that I, Shi Tao, was right about you, ha ha ha. Holy Dragon Shi Tao laughed. He had thought that today would be a sad day for the Shi clan, but he did not expect that today would be their lucky day. Seeing how proud Shi Tao was, and then looking at Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong, they were also very cute and excited. This made the elders of the Shi clan feel so regretful that they wanted to commit suicide. Although they still did not know what Kong Shinmu had achieved, there was no doubt that Kong Shinmu's status was completely different from before. As long as Kong Shinmu was around, the 2 Flame Dragon envoys would help protect the Shi clan residents. This was what made him so terrifying. With the protection of the Flame Dragon envoys, would the Shi clan residents not be able to develop? As for the people that Dragon King had brought with him, their faces were all ashen. However, they did not dare to run away. After all, where could they run to in front of the Flame Dragon envoys? Now that Dragon King had been defeated by Magpie Dragon King in one move, the people that Dragon King had brought with him could only prepare to listen to the Flame Dragon envoys' arrangements. After settling the matter with Shi Tao, the 2 Flame Dragon envoys naturally would not let Dragon King leave just like that. The Magpie Dragon King loosened his grip and pushed Quan Long Wang's body away, causing him to fall heavily onto the ground in the courtyard. This heavy fall caused him to wake up from his unconsciousness. Previously, Dragon King had defeated Dragon King in one move, which made him lose consciousness instantly after he realized that he had provoked a powerful being. Now that he had been thrown, he woke up and immediately jumped up. As for his son Zhao Tianji, who had also fallen behind him, he had already been shaken by Kong Shinmu's attack. He had been knocked unconscious by Dragon King and Dragon King. Now that Dragon King had thrown him, he had also woken up. There seemed to be stars in his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he found that the atmosphere in the entire courtyard had changed. Before Dragon King Quan had fainted, he had seen Dragon King take out the flaming token. So as soon as he woke up, he already knew what had happened. Although he did not know why the Flame Dragon envoys would stand on Kong Shinmu's side and help Kong Shinmu, there was no doubt that this time he, Dragon King Quan, had already been defeated. 2 Flame Dragon envoys. Today's matter is really not like what you have seen. Please listen to our explanation. Dragon King Quan hurriedly climbed up and begged the 2 Flame Dragon envoys to explain. Compared with the arrogant look he had before, when he even wanted to help his son Zhao Tianji kill Kong Shinmu, there was a world of difference. Because he was very clear about the authoritative position of the Flame Dragon envoys in the Dragon Emperor's court. It could be said that the appearance of the Flame Dragon envoys could be regarded as the arrival of the Dragon Emperor in person, who was the most powerful existence in the entire Dragon Emperor's court. How could Dragon King Quan not panic? You don't need to explain. We have already understood the matter here. Dragon King Quan shook his head and waved his hand casually. Why don't you quickly take your people and go back to Quanlong Yu? For the time being, it will not affect you when you go back to Quanlong Yu to be a local tyrant. But if I find that you bully people like this next time, I will give up the title of Dragon King. Thank you, Flame Dragon envoys. Thank you, Flame Dragon envoys. Hearing this, Dragon King Quan hurriedly bowed twice, then pulled his confused son Zhao Tianji behind him, turned around and quickly left the Shi mansion. Zhao Tianji could be said to have lost to Kong Shinmu in the previous duel, which made him lose face. After all, he was at the 4th level of the Nirvana Tribulation Realm. How could he lose to a boy at the 9th level of the Divine Martial Realm? However, thinking that Kong Shinmu's essence and blood inheritance was at the level of the Holy Dragon, he was relieved. After all, he was the youngest Holy Dragon expert of the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, right? In any case, Zhao Wuwang left with Zhao Tianji, and the other people of Quanlong Yu, including the Holy Dragon, also turned around and left. They did not dare to make a fool of themselves here. Previously, they were all standing on the opposite side of the Shi mansion. Now, they could not immediately turn around and compliment the Shi mansion, right? After leaving the Shi mansion, Dragon King Quan and his son Zhao Tianji finally learned from their subordinates that in order to help the Shi mansion, the Flame Dragon envoys had actually accepted disciples, and even let the Holy Dragon Shi Tao go to the Holy Tower to participate in the test and try to break through to the realm of the Dragon King. After hearing this news, Dragon King Quan almost vomited blood. He did not know what went wrong at all. That Kong Shinmu had clearly not come out of the Holy Tower for a year, but when he came out, he actually became a Holy Dragon and had such a good relationship with the Flame Dragon envoys. This obviously made the Flame Dragon Emperor think highly of him. For the time being, there is no need to pay attention to them. Let's see if that Shi Tao can become the Dragon King. Dragon King Quan's eyes were gloomy, and he did not dare to cause any trouble for the time being. After all, after this, the Flame Dragon envoys would definitely focus on the Quanlong Yu where he was, and it would be difficult for him to protect himself. As for Zhao Tianji's plan to forcefully marry Shi Yueying, it could be said that this plan was completely ruined. Originally, Shi Yueying's identity was ordinary, and he could completely bully her. But now if he still wanted to get his hands on Shi Yueying's master, Ming Dragon King, would probably uproot the entire region where he and his father lived. There would be no place for him to reason with them. This was the deterrence brought about by strength. After this incident, Dragon King Quan and the others would definitely not dare to do anything to the Shi clan residence. In fact, the Shi clan residence was very likely to become the Dragon King residence in the future. From a holy dragon to a Dragon King, it was an extremely important transformation, and many dragon martial artists would not even have such an opportunity in their lifetime. Originally, with Shi Tao's ability, it was still possible for him to get this opportunity a few years later. But now, under the influence of his relationship with Kong Shinmu, it could be said that he had gotten this opportunity a few years in advance. After the Dragon King Quan fled with his people, Shi Tao finally breathed a sigh of relief in the Shi clan residence. Chapter 41:18. Outside the Dragon Prison City, a few young dragon martialists flew in the direction of the Shi clan residence. In the distance, they seemed to see a few figures of nobles fleeing in a sorry state. They seemed to have seen them before. Are those the Dragon King Quan and the others? I don't know. No matter what, let's go back and take a look. One of them was one of the sons of the holy dragon Shi Tao. He had always been training outside and had been assigned to a region that the Shi clan was in charge of. He was in charge of the local city and was responsible for the safety of the city. When he heard that the Dragon King Quan had gone to the Shi clan residence aggressively and wanted to force his sister to marry that guy's playboy son, he rushed back from the city as fast as he could. However, as soon as he returned with his trusted aides, he saw people pointing at those familiar figures along the way. Their words seemed to be extremely puzzled, and he didn't know what exactly had happened. Soon, they returned to the Shi clan residence. When they arrived at the entrance of the residence, they were still a little confused. Didn't they say that the situation was urgent? Why did it seem like the onlookers outside were whispering, as if something big had happened in the Shi clan residence? After entering the residence, they saw Shi Tao, Shi Yueying, and Shi Yutong sitting in the hall resting. Dad, Yueying, Yutong, how are you? Where are the Dragon King Quan and the others? A few young men rushed in anxiously. Although it was useless for them to come back, they still wanted to contribute their strength at this moment. You're late. Shi Tao glanced at them and smiled. Kong Shinmu just came over and brought 2 Flame Dragon envoys. The 2 Flame Dragon envoys will soon bring your 2 sisters to the Flame Dragon Emperor's court and become their disciples. As for me, I got a chance to step into the Flame Dragon's sacred tower and try to become a Dragon King. Ha! How could this be? This news instantly caused the few young men to be dumbstruck, and they slightly didn't dare to believe it. That's the truth. There's something even more shocking. Shi Yutong giggled. Brother, do you know what grade of divine dragon blood Kong Shinmu has now? He really became a divine dragon. It's said that after continuously challenging the Flame Dragon's sacred tower for a year, he passed the 5th floor and finally obtained an increase in essence blood. Divine dragon. The few young men were stunned on the spot, unable to believe it at all. How old was Kong Shinmu? He had already become a divine dragon? This probably didn't even exist in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. I didn't expect that we would be a step too late and miss the good show of Dragon King running away with his tail between his legs. Shi Tao's son burst into laughter. Since the Shi clan's mansion was fine, he was relieved. At the same time, he was even more interested in Kong Shinmu, whom he had never met before. But he also knew that Kong Shinmu was already an inheritor of the divine dragon's essence blood, and had probably far surpassed his level. To be valued so highly by the Flame Dragon Envoy, Dragon Emperor, his future was bound to be limitless. Not only Kong Shinmu, I'm afraid even Yueying and Yutong, you 2 girls, will improve faster than me in the future. The young man smiled helplessly. However, his smile was filled with extreme joy. Right, what about Kong Shinmu and the 2 Flame Dragon envoys? He asked hurriedly. They've already left. They said they wanted to return to the Jiang clan to bid their final farewell. As for where Kong Shinmu is going, none of us know. Shi Tao said. They've already gone back? The young man couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He didn't expect that he would still be late despite rushing back in a hurry. This time, he had really missed a good show. I hope I can still see him in the future. That was all he could think. Dragon King Ming and Dragon King K had already brought Kong Shinmu back to Great Jiang Dragon City at an extremely fast speed. The matter at the Shi clan residence had already been settled, so they naturally didn't need to worry about anything else happening. In the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's court, no one had the guts to provoke the Shi clan residents. After all, there were 2 new disciples of the Flame Dragon envoys, and a future Dragon King. Most importantly, the attention of the Flame Dragon envoys was the attention of Yen Dragon Emperor. If they wanted to harm the Shi clan residents, they didn't want to stay in the Yen Dragon Emperor's court any longer. Therefore, Kong Shinmu prepared to return to the Jiang clan with the 2 Flame Dragon envoys. Originally, Kong Shinmu wanted to return by himself. After all, there shouldn't be any accidents happening at the Jiang clan. As for the 2 Flame Dragon envoys, they could first bring Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong back to the Yen Dragon Emperor's court. However, Yen Dragon Emperor ordered them to safely escort Kong Shinmu out of the Yen Dragon Emperor's court. If there was a chance, they would even escort him all the way to Donghuang Yonggu College. Only then would Dragon Emperor be at ease. After all, although Kong Shinmu was extremely talented, his cultivation level was still too low. If he were to encounter any accidents on the way, it would be terrible. Therefore, the two flame dragon envoys did not bring anyone back, but insisted on traveling with Kong Shinmu. Originally, Kong Shinmu had spent a few months escaping from the Jiang clan to the center of the Dragon Prison Domain, Dragon Prison City. But now, under the lead of the Flame Dragon envoys, they had only spent 1 or 2 days to return to the Jiang clan from Dragon Prison City. However, when they got closer to Jiang Longqing, the three of them felt an uncomfortable aura. It was as if there was a smell of blood floating in the air. It came from a direction not far from Jiang Dragon City, causing Kong Shinmu's expression to change slightly. He could almost feel the traces of an intense battle in the air. There was a battle here, and it wasn't of a low level. Dragon King's hoarse voice came out. He was experienced, so he could not be wrong. Quickly, let's go check out the situation in Jiang Dragon City. Dragon King's figure suddenly sped up, turning into a beam of light. In an instant, he disappeared from Kong Shinmu's sight. Without a doubt, this was the super speed of Dragon King as a flame dragon envoy. But when he was bringing Kong Shinmu along, this speed was not suitable. Otherwise, it would only take a few hours to return from Dragon Prison City to Jiang Dragon City. The closer they got to Jiang Dragon City, the more nervous Kong Shinmu became. In the Jiang clan, although there were many Nirvana Tribulation Realm Dragon Warriors, their cultivation levels were not too high, and they did not have any inherited blood essence of the Sky Dragon or above. Chapter 41:19. Kong Shinmu was nervous. The Jiang tribe was his starting point. His mother, Gu Yuero, was still in Great Jiang Dragon City. If anything were to happen to her, he would not be able to forgive himself. Soon, the Flame Dragon envoy, Dragon King, returned after investigating the situation. Her voice turned cold. In front of us was a battle between several tribes over a mine's resources. This mine's resources were discovered to be within the Jiang tribe's territory, but it attracted the covetous eyes of several nearby tribes. They even joined forces to force the Jiang tribe to hand over the mine's resources. There's such a thing? Dragon King muttered. This battle seems to have caused quite a number of casualties. Let's go take a look. Within the Yen Dragon Emperor's court, it was divided according to territory. Initially, it was divided into the Dragon Domain, and then into different Dragon Warrior tribes. Every Dragon Warrior tribe's property in their territory belonged to the Dragon Warrior tribe. So, according to reason, since the mine's resources were discovered in the Jiang tribe, they belonged to the Jiang tribe. But now the nearby tribe saw that the Jiang tribe was weak, so they joined forces to divide the mine's resources. One must know that there were many materials used to refine dragon weapons in the mine, and there were even some special resources that could be used to refine secret cultivation medicines. Many treasures grew in the mines that never saw the light of day, so it was easy to dig out some good stuff. These things, by right, belonged to the Jiang tribe. If other tribes coveted the property, it would be a violation of the rules. For example, in the Dragon Prison Domain, the Dragon King of Dragon Prison City and many sacred dragon experts were in charge of this matter. No one was allowed to cross the line. Now that the Dragon King had died in an accident, and the Dragon Emperor Xia Yan had betrayed the Yen Dragon Emperor's court, and the sacred dragon Shi Tao was facing the threat of the Dragon King, there was no one to manage the Jiang tribe's affairs. A cold light flashed in Kong Shinmu's eyes. He followed the two flame dragon envoys, and flew towards the location of the mine at the fastest speed. Of course, the two flame dragon envoys took the initiative to bring Kong Shinmu, mainly so that he could rush back as soon as possible. After all, they knew that Kong Shinmu must be burning with anxiety. Soon, they arrived at a mountain range covered in forests. This mountain range belonged to the Jiang tribal clan's territory, and was only slightly closer to the neighboring Ji tribal clan. Currently, the nearby air was filled with the smell of fresh blood. It was obvious that a rather intense battle had taken place here, and there might even be many casualties. And the ones with the most casualties were naturally the Jiang clan's dragon warriors. It wasn't that the Jiang tribal clan's dragon warriors were weak, but the Jiang tribal clan could not do anything if the nearby tribes joined forces to oppress the Jiang tribal clan. Soon, the three of them descended from the sky above the dense forest. Below the dense forest, in the middle of the mountain range, there was an open space. At this moment, there was a large number of dragon warriors, at least a few hundred of them, gathered together. They were clearly divided into several camps. One of the camps seemed to have the least number of people, and everyone seemed to be injured. It was the Zhang tribal clan's dragon warriors. After Zhang Rong had been taken away by Kong Xinmu, he had never returned. And after that, the Zhang tribal clan elected a new patriarch. This patriarch would temporarily hold the position of patriarch until Zhang Liuxue's cultivation level rose to the Nirvana Tribulation realm. Only then would he give the position to Zhang Liuxue. In the Zhang tribal clan, the strongest were only the inheritors of the heavenly dragon's blood essence, and they were two older dragon warriors. They were now in the late stages of the Nirvana Tribulation realm, and had yet to step into the Rebirth Tribulation realm. As for the other Ji tribal clans, there were quite a number of such existences. Just based on the number of Nirvana Tribulation realm dragon warriors, the Zhang tribal clan had less than 20. But which of the other dragon warrior tribes did not have 30 to 40 Nirvana Tribulation realm dragon warriors? Although the Zhang tribal clan had obtained a lot of cultivation resources in the previous clan tournament, the transformation of cultivation resources into strength was a slow process. With so many cultivation resources, although they had cultivated 2 new Nirvana Tribulation realm dragon warriors, the Zhang tribal clan had been weak for many years. It was not something that could be changed in such a short period of time. As a result, the Zhang tribal clan had relied on their willpower to fight for the mine's resources. They did not give in no matter what, but they still suffered heavy losses. Although no dragon warriors died, there were too many who were seriously injured. In the crowd, Kong Xinmu saw the other party's identity. Under the leadership of Ji Yeshuan, the Ji tribal clan was aggressive. They were the most powerful force in forcing the Zhang tribal clan to hand over the mine's resources. The Meng tribal clan and the Zhang tribal clan were 2 of the more powerful tribes in the clan tournament. Now, they had also participated in the Zhang tribal clan's mining resources. And there was another tribe, the Gu tribal clan. The Gu tribal clan's dragon warriors cultivated more body-tempering dragon martial techniques. Now they had also come to fight for the resources. The mine was one of the few rich mines in the Zhang tribal clan. If they could occupy it, it would allow the Zhang tribal clan to have 10 more Nirvana Tribulation realm dragon warriors in 10 years. Combined with the cultivation resources obtained from the clan tournament, the Zhang tribal clan's long-term weakness would be improved, and they might even surpass the other tribes. So, the 4 neighboring tribes were envious. On one hand, they wanted the mine's resources, and on the other hand, they wanted to suppress the Zhang tribal clan's development. Many of the young geniuses of the Meng tribal clan and the Zhang tribal clan had died in the war against the northern Chill Dragon country. Among them were Meng Chou and others. Some had even died in the hands of Kong Xinmu. There were also those who had been taken away with the son of the sacred dragon Xia Yan and never returned. They wanted to bully the Zhang tribal clan and avenge their deaths. It was unrealistic to seek revenge from Kong Xinmu, but the Zhang tribal clan could not escape. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the battle for the mine's resources came into being. At this moment, the Zhang tribal clan had suffered a crushing defeat. Many of the dragon warriors were dejected. Their eyes were filled with anger, but they did not dare to speak. As for the dragon warriors of the other 4 clans, they were in a state of mutual hostility. Obviously, they had already seized the resources of the mine. However, how to distribute them was also a big problem. After all, the 4 tribes were not equally strong. They had occupied the mine's resources, so it was impossible for them to distribute evenly. There were many benefits involved, so it could only be resolved by strength. And now, it was time for the 4 tribes to fight for the distribution. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.